You skipped it, you dissed it, you said it's a bore. But what if that film's got a little bit more? What if I don't like it? What if it's bad? What if it's awkward or lazy or sad? But what if it's genius, a total surprise? What if it's gold when I open my eyes? We're watching the films you love to avoid. Now sit down and deal with your cinephile void. What if I don't like it? Let's give it a spin. You might hate it or love it. Let's dive right in.
Welcome to episode 28 of What If I Don't Like It? This is the show where we take guests and we have them watch a movie that they have not yet seen because they don't think that they will like it. And we ask them, what if you don't like it? While we try and hope to get them to a point where maybe they do like it. They just have to give it a try. Of course, we don't always succeed, and sometimes the guest, and even myself on certain episodes, because I also play the game along, don't like the movie at all. And there are ones where, surprisingly, they do love it. Will today be one of those cases? Will Matt Strackbein, also known as the Letterhack, that is his sobriquet, and that is your word of the day for today, will he like this movie? We're going to pitch right after this straight into the two videos that will now be part one, which is the 5 minutes of me talking about why I think this is a great movie and why I think he might like it. And then he's going to tell you in his own video why he has been hesitant to see it and why he thinks he might not like it. And then we'll go into part two where we see, did he like it? Of course, if you've already seen those teasers, because they've been put out on TikTok, on here on YouTube, and also on Instagram, you can just click on the chapters, they're that way, and go to part two. Did Matt like it? Otherwise, you can just keep listening and it'll play right into that. This is, of course, the top of the show where I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping and just tell you what's going on with me. If you've been following me on social media, you probably know a lot of this, and I would love it if you're following me on social media. I am Movie Runtime on all of those platforms. Here on YouTube, you're also seeing me on TikTok and Instagram. I used to have a different handle on Instagram, but it's much easier now. I am Movie Runtime across all of those, and even Movie Runtime on Bluesky, which I don't post to as regularly as I should, but I do love being on there, and the Letterhack is on there a lot. So that's a great place to see him, as well as here on YouTube. All of those links will be in the liner notes and available to you. It's pretty easy. He's at the Letterhack on both of those platforms, so you'll find them that way. Other than that, I just got into the Independent Film Critics Guild, which is a wonderful thing. I'm trying to get into more film critics guilds as I flex myself as a film critic. You can find me on Letterboxd at, would you believe it's at Movie Runtime? I write long-form movie reviews. I'm also building up a website that will be coming out soon, so those will be posted there regularly because I love to write my reviews as well. I mean, this format is super, super fun, but I do also like to put stuff in print. So those are just some other ways that you can interact with me. I'm going to keep this pretty short. We're going to go right on into it. And of course, again, if you've already seen these trailers, just skip them. Otherwise, here we go. Why do I think Matt will like this movie, and why does Matt think he won't? On the upcoming episode of What If I Don't Like It, we'll be joined by Matt, who you might know as the Letterhack. And he's going to watch a movie that I absolutely adore and I cannot believe he hasn't seen. He'll be giving us his video that explains why he hasn't seen it and why he may or may not expect to like it. But this is the video that I'm generating for him to hype him up before he sees it and to tell him a couple of reasons why I think he really will like this. Let's just get this out of the way and talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, this film is associated with Joss Whedon because he co-wrote it along with Drew Goddard, who is also the director of it. The two of them work together a lot on Marvel stuff, and they work together on Buffy. That does not really mean that this is entirely Whedon's viewpoint. I do feel like Goddard had a lot to do with this, specifically because he was the director. I think when you look at stuff like Usual Suspects and you have to think about, like, here we have Spacey involved in the film, but the director himself was not involved in any of that kind of stuff. Can we have fruit from a poisonous tree? And I know a lot of people feel very strongly about Joss Whedon, and so that may or may not affect whether or not you feel like you can watch this movie. That being said, let me tell you a couple things about Drew Goddard that you may not know that are kind of really fun. He is a writer and director. He wrote a lot of television shows. He wrote the original Buffy. He worked on Alias and Angel, obviously, and he also worked on Lost. And as a director, he's only directed 3 things. This film, something called Bad Times at El Royale, which I have not yet seen but do plan to see, and the pilot episode of The Good Place. He is also known for his Oscar nominee for The Martian, Best Screenplay Adaptation for that. So I really feel like Goddard's got a lot of good stuff in his belt, and it really shows here this is his directorial debut film. You're also going to get a very, very young Chris Hemsworth. He had been in Australian television, and he had done, he played Chris Pine's dad, Captain Kirk's dad, in the 2009 Star Trek as like a cameo role. But this shoots before Thor, even though Thor comes out before Cabin in the Woods, so we get an incredibly fresh face, an incredibly young Chris Hemsworth doing his first real feature acting work here. And it's joyous, and it's so much fun. You're also going to get Bradley Whitford. I mean, that is such a good get for this film, and he is astonishingly fantastic in it. Personally, I'm a Grey's Anatomy fan, so when I saw an incredibly young Jesse Williams, I freaked out. I forgot he was even in this. And Fran Kranz, who plays the stoner character, I'm a stoner, so I feel like such love for this character. This is a mirror up to who I am, and the first time I saw this movie, I literally went, "'Tis I!" So it is, it's an incredibly enjoyable movie for stoners. I think they'll really love that character. Horror movie fans will also really love this because while it has tons of Easter eggs, get ready to find all kinds of things in here. Fans of The Cube, you'll definitely find some stuff. It subverts that. So it sends it up while subverting it. And anytime it becomes very tropey or very cliched, I mean, it's called The Cabin in the Woods. It's intentionally generic to make a point. It goes a little further and says, hey, you're in on the joke with me here. This is satire. So if anything, Cabin in the Woods is more funny than it even is scary. And I really, really love that. That being said, there are obviously some things to dislike about pretty much any movie if you come at it from a certain way. If you don't like Whedon, I already said you might not like this. If you're not really into meta commentary or satire or kind of like breaking of all of that, you're gonna really, really hate this. If you want gory, straightforward slasher horror, it's not really gonna do that as well. It is making a commentary. It is very intellectual. So, you know, even being basely intellectual, it does have horror. It does have gore in it. It is not straightforward horror. And if that's really your bag and you hate meta commentary and you hate comedy in your horror, don't even watch this movie. How did you get here? But for me, I just really adore this movie. I watch it every 420 because it is one of my favorite stoner movies and because it ends in a way that is very true to how I view humanity and the world. And if you know the ending, you'll know a lot more about me, but Matt doesn't yet, so we'll have to save that for when we record part 2 and he sits down with me after having seen this and we see, what if he did like it?
The Cabin in the Woods first came out in theaters at a time when I was watching 6 or 7 movies a week. I was living in Boulder, Colorado, and there was this amazing video rental place called the Video Station. I would go in there on my lunch break every Tuesday, without fail, every single Tuesday, and talk with the owner who would give me a list of recommendations and tell me what all the new movies were coming out that week. We'd discuss all kinds of movies, domestic and international, that he thought maybe I wanted to see, but also stuff that I wanted to see. And we would talk about it and I would make my choice. Because, you know, this is talking about like a couple dozen movies. I wasn't going to watch that many movies in a week. And then on that same day, that Tuesday, I would reserve my movies for Friday. And then after work, I would go pick up the movies and I'd watch them all that weekend. And this place was awesome because not only were they discussing film with you and like remembering stuff that you'd already seen and kind of getting a feel for your taste and what you liked, but they would let you reserve the movies for Friday. So there was a guarantee I was going to watch them all. And sometimes if they weren't there, they would say, "Oh, we got this one instead. Don't worry, you'll like it." So I was hands down the biggest movie geek of anyone I knew at the time. And I was watching movies that I thought I liked, whether, for certain directors or genres, but mostly I was watching movies to broaden my understanding of film. I was challenging myself to watch things that weren't mainstream, things that I wouldn't normally seek out. I just wanted to see whatever I wasn't already being shown. It was an amazing opportunity to have that kind of access. And, of course, I took full advantage. So whenever somebody would randomly tell me that I, quote, had to see a movie, some random movie, I would think to myself, obviously, I know which movies I should or shouldn't be seeing. I had my finger on the pulse. I knew what was in the theater or available for rent. And I knew what appealed to me and what didn't, and why I should be seeing something or not. So I wasn't about to run out and see a movie that one of my coworkers suggested I had to see. But with The Cabin in the Woods, I was just getting like these casual recommendations. Uh, uh, people were like, "Oh my god, I just saw a movie that was unexpected." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've heard about it, but it's on my radar, but it's not on my list." But then people started telling me like I had to see it. Like I had to see it. I was being told that like I'd love it the most because I was a movie fan, and that I'd get all the Easter eggs and all the references that apparently were, throughout the movie. And I hate to say it, but that was an even bigger turnoff for me. Not only was I admittedly like a snob about the volume of movies I was watching and the variety of movies, and not only was I highly organized and efficient about watching them, but I've never watched movies because I'm a movie fan. I watch movies because it's fun to do. I like watching movies, and that makes me a movie fan. But I don't go into it with expectations or assuming someone's art was made for me because I'm a movie fan. If movies are made for fans, that I don't get that. That's weird to me. That's just catering to the audience. So if a movie was made specifically for movie fans, I'm not really into it. Now, I get that isn't necessarily a fun way to live your life. And I understand it's sort of snobby, like I said, but it's the reason I didn't see The Cabin in the Woods when it came out. Over the years, I heard little things about the movie here and there, and I got to tell you, I've never once regretted my decision to not see it. It looks like a highly standard horror movie, but I understand it's supposed to be more than that. Um, and now it's my assignment to watch the movie so I can discuss it with KT, who I hear likes the movie a lot. And I really am looking forward to it, at least to have a discussion about it. There's things where there are times where people will say, "Oh, that movie sucked," or "Oh, that movie was awesome." And I don't think either one of those is a valid way to recommend a movie. It's just what you personally thought about it, and it's basically just a single word. It sucked or it was awesome. And that's not enough for me. So discussing a film makes it worthwhile whether I wanted to see it or not. But all I keep thinking is, what if I don't like it?
Welcome to episode 28. I am so excited, guys. We are not only talking to someone who I adore talking to, we are talking about a movie I adore talking about. I don't usually get to be this lucky. Sometimes people are like, I'm going to make you gruel me through something, and I have to watch like 10 horror musicals to find something for someone, but this was kismet. Welcome, Matt, the Letterhack.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. I've been doing something where I sent out a list of movies that are considered divisive that I adore to people and ask them, like, is there one on the list you haven't seen? I sent the list to you and you came back with haven't seen Cabin in the Woods.
That way, and like I was going through the list and I was like, oh no, I've seen all these. Like, this is going to be impossible. And I was like, no, there's the one movie that everyone says I should see that I haven't seen. It was perfect. So you're right. It was Kismet.
Kismet. Of the other ones that you had seen, was it mostly a list of movies where you're like, I like these, or I don't know?
I don't recall there being anything
Okay.
offensive on there.
No Amelia Perez on there. Sorry, guys.
I haven't seen that, but I've heard terrible things.
It I deeply do not consider myself a musician. My dad was a country folk musician, is a country folk musician. Uh, and I've just been so bad at learning it, but everyone in my family has perfect pitch and can learn very easily. Watching this movie not only made me feel like I was a genius about music, it also made me feel like maybe I don't like music at all as a human.
That's brutal. Oh my gosh.
Like, if you
That's
didn't know
not what
what
I would call art supporting artists or whatever.
I mean, it's a great example of what it sounds like when someone sings flat. Like, I've never heard so many flat notes in intentionally in a piece of music.
Wow. Bummer. That's
But
I'm okay, so I'm assuming this has been covered on Movie Night Extravaganza and I skipped it because I haven't seen it. Like, I'll watch those episodes after I've seen stuff, and
mhm,
I'm just assuming you covered it and all this is public knowledge. Oh no,
no,
okay. All
no,
right.
this actually is too movie night has a threshold bottom. We will not cover a movie if everyone in the group hates it.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. So I
Yep.
should next time somebody recommends a movie for that and I'm on there, I should say I don't like it if I really don't like it,
They
in
don't
the
like to
hopes we can
drag a
get like
movie. Yeah.
unanimous consent.
Yeah, I there
Okay.
every once in a while, you'll see that I'm not on an episode. I wasn't on
Mm.
the From Dusk Till Dawn episode because I was like, "No, I cannot be polite about this."
I kind of want to see that though. I want to see. I've gone on there. I've told people ahead of time. I didn't like this movie. Don't worry. I will not derail this episode.
Mhm. Yes,
Be objective to a point.
especially because this is my bailiwick. My bailiwick is, what do you do when you didn't like something, or what do you do when you
Right.
think you're not gonna like something? But, that show is not this show, and it does what it does great. So, I kinda take that energy and bring it back over into here.
Okay.
But before we get too far into that, my audience doesn't may not know you, and I'd love to tell them all about you, all the stuff that you do. For example, the name, the letter hack. What does that mean?
A letter hack is a prolific letter writer who hacks their way into whichever industry they're commenting on or giving editorial to. In my case, I was a letter writer to comic book letter columns. This was, wow, for a long time. It went on for, I don't know, 15 years where I was showing up in the back of comic books on a weekly basis.
Wow.
Um, a lot of the same ones over and over. At one time, I was arguably the most popular Hellboy fan in all of North America just because of my commentary on it. And it got
Yeah.
to the point where the creator and the editor were asking me to contribute writing and art to those comics. So I hacked my way in and I did 4 two-page backup stories giving a brief history on some of their characters with really dense storylines. And like readers, it's almost impossible to just jump in and know what's going
Mhm.
on. So there were times where they go, we really do need to bring people up to speed first. Can you do a backup story? And they wanted me to put myself in those strips, those comics as the reader and give it from my personal perspective. And it started out with a character I truly hated, a villain. He killed one of the heroes, one of my all-time favorite comic characters. And that guy in comics, people die and come right back. They left him gone. And then when the villain died, they kept bringing him back and they would bring people back in that villain's mantle, like different people. And I started, they called him the Black Flame. And I would sign my letters, kill the Black Flame, Matt Strackbein, right? And that was my sign off. And so they said, will you do one about the Black Flame, bring everyone up to speed, but do it from that angry perspective you had. And so then I started to create the letter hack, the character.
Mhm.
So there's Matt, me, and then there's Matt in the comics who's just a little bit extra. You know what I mean? A little bit
Mhm.
too much, a little bit too overboard, and that's really fun. And it gave readers something to relate to. And from there, people have referred to me as the letter hack. So I just use that as a social media handle on like Twitter.
Oh,
And
cool.
and soon enough it just people like knew my work by that name. So that's good.
That's awesome. It's such a great moniker. I had never heard it before the first time I'd
Yeah.
met you. And I like Googled it and I was like, wow, this feels like German, where you're like, I didn't know we had a specific word for that whole concept.
Right. And there's like a lot of famous comic book creators. You know, David Goyer, the movie script writer,
Hmm.
he started out as a letter hack, I think, in the back of DC Comics in the 80s or something. So it happens. It's a thing.
That's so cool. I love that. I love the idea that you can come into an industry from a different way, especially because someone trying to break into acting, the idea that if you're not somebody's kid, how do you even start? It's like, oh yeah, you
Right.
have to hack your way in sideways and just do
Hmm.
whatever you can. It's almost a compulsion where I would, like, I would love to be able to do something else with my life. This is the only thing that seems to motivate me. It's like almost an addiction. Please pay me for my addiction.
Well, and hacking your way in from being part of the fan base. So, like, you could be too much of a fan. You could be what they call a fanboy, right? And just like
Mhm.
really get upset when they make changes and stuff like that. Or you could
Yeah.
provide like thoughtful commentary on that and get their attention. And then, besides like contributing work, they would send me first issue comic books before they were even fully colored and say, "Can you write a
Yes.
letter for this?" And then I'd have a letter in issue 1 and everyone's like, "How do you get a letter in the first issue? It just came out," right? So there was a lot of that, and they were like, can you check this out, or are we doing this right?" And like every now and then, like the creator of Hellboy would contact me and say, "Hey, did we ever mention this in the comics?" Because I would know better than they would. And so I would say, "Yeah, no, you definitely did. It was on this page in this issue,"
Wow!
or "No, you definitely haven't." Right? And so,
Yes.
so that was kind of, that was cool. So it
Ah.
allows you to be a fan in what I would call like a morally responsible way.
Yeah, you get to be like the bearer of the stories. Like you stood there
Yeah,
and you kept them all, and you're part of this culture of continuing the oration and making sure that we as a culture remember this important story. I'm
exactly.
a huge Dark Souls from Software fan, and there are fans within that fan base that have taken all of the lore. The lore in the game only exists in the description of the items. So when you pick up an item, you have to go into the like inventory and read the hidden description. And they've made a whole book of that. And now they're the people
Wow.
that the software company can go to, because literally you guys, you got it all together. You are our hive mind,
Yeah.
but they're
The
just fans.
the yeah, and like at one, sometimes people would be like, "Dude, you're a nerd. What are you carrying that knowledge around for?" And then in my case, I can go, "Well, they may need it."
Yeah, like, well, the fact of the matter is I'm going to have I'm going to have all of the arbitrary Oscar stats in my head regardless of whether or not anyone wants it. So why do I have it? A little bit of autism, a little bit of spectrum, like, you name it, but it's there, guys. So if you want to know how many people who've been nominated for best score were already nominated before they won, it's 35, and it's upsetting.
See, okay, I really appreciate that because I am not archival. I cannot retain like I'll get okay, if I do a podcast about a certain comic, don't assume I know it front and back like I appeared to it one time. I'll have to refresh myself and then go, "Oh yeah, it's all coming back. I'm there now." But like off the cuff, if I'm talking to a guest about like one of my guests about politics or something like that, and they want to start talking about movies, I'm like, I'm not prepared for this. If you give me 5 minutes, I could be, but not live. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate it when people can just access those databases like that.
Oh, yeah, it's, memorizing lines. It's because I've seen it in text, and usually I have to memorize it to do a video for TikTok, and
Oh,
then
I
once
see.
I've done the video for TikTok, it's like, "Well, I hope somebody needs to know that because I'm never gonna forget it."
That's awesome.
So I made it to the final round of Jeopardy. I didn't get called in, but I did make it through the entire test.
Oh, wow. Oh, I want to hear more about that now. That's
It's super fun.
fascinating.
It's super fun. And when you make it all the way to the end and you're waiting to get called in, they call you in based on personality and whether or not it fits in the show, and they keep you in the database for a couple of years. They give you a little pen that's exactly the buzzer so that you can practice at home clicking the it has the exact weight and feel of the buzzer. I'm going to shoot for pop
Oh,
culture
wow.
Jeopardy though now because I hear that is fun. I've seen a couple episodes. Looks good. I got a 2-person team with me.
Oh, you would do great. That's awesome.
Super fun stuff.
I'd love to
Uh,
help with prep.
yeah, right. Just quizzes on quizzes. Uh, but getting back to you, we know why you're called the letter hack. How are you on social media? How can people connect with you? I know if you're on YouTube, I've been linking. It should be right above us. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There'll be a little thing that's like, click to see Matt's stuff.
Yeah, I do a YouTube show 5 days a week, and
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you can catch me on Bluesky, and I have my own Discord that has a great little community. I
Oh, I can join
am
that.
I'm one of those people that's like pulling back on all my social media. Um, I I don't want to
Mm.
be everywhere. I want to be where I should be. And so, there's all
Ah.
kinds of new platforms popping up here and there, and some of them just I I don't think they deserve people. Okay, there's a lot of
Mm.
people that use social media in a very good way, and I regret not having a TikTok anymore where I can see that stuff. I regret not being on Twitter as much where I can see that stuff. I'm sort of phasing out Instagram. That's a huge regret. It's actually really hard to wean myself off Instagram. But
Mm.
I think those platforms and the people that run them need to earn the users, not just say, yeah, of course you want to be a part of this because everyone is, and we'll do what we want in the meantime with our, terms of service and all that stuff and guidelines and lack of content moderation and fact checking. And
Mhm.
that's very problematic, like for the lives of people who don't even use social media, right? So anyway,
Mhm.
so I'm kind of pulling back, but my YouTube is where I feel like that really I didn't intend for it to it's not wildly popular, but I didn't intend for it to be as popular as it is and to have as much of an audience as I do. And so I'm really using that as a way to encourage more people to do
Mhm.
stuff like this, like a podcast like this right here. If you have something you're interested in, lean into it. If social media helps you build that platform, by all means, go for it.
Mhm.
But for me, I've gotten to a point now where it's like, I just kind of sit here on YouTube 5 days a week and get way more out of it than I ever did from social media. But I would have been nothing without that social media presence because what I do now on camera started out as just drawing at home.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I so empathize with what you're saying. I have been moving almost all of my content to YouTube and really trying to be like, this is where you're going to find me now. I'm still vestigially on TikTok and Instagram. I'm doing really well on Instagram, so I guess I'll kind of keep. I really regret that, although I just hate TikTok right now. It is very Pet Cemetery, where perhaps some things are better left dead. Like it came
That's a
back,
great
but
analogy.
it didn't come back the same, man.
That's really good. That's great. And this is the thing is like I started out like I went freelance. I left the corporate world and went freelance and started watching a lot of, you know, YouTube in the background while cuz I'm a graphic
Mhm.
designer, so I'd like to have stuff on in the background. I went through all my um DVD commentary pretty much right away and then like decided it was 2015, there was a lot of political news. I was like, let me just, you know, I don't have cable, but I'll watch CNN or MSNBC on YouTube. And then I started to realize I don't really like mainstream media. Look at all these other alternatives that are being suggested to
Mhm.
me. And that's where I found like what people refer to as the online left and all these
Mhm.
independent left wing media figures. And they, at the time, were a lot less popular than they are now. Although I would argue that even today, they could use promotion and our support. And so I support people in the way I always do is draw them in real time
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch a show, like a popular YouTube show, doing the news, and if they had good dynamics and they were saying funny things, or there was like a co-host and maybe a producer who would chime in, then I would draw the things they were talking about in real time, put it online, tag them. Not only would they share, a lot of these people started putting it on air before their show was over for the day, and they would say, how did you do that so fast? And it's funny and it looks like us and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to poach their audience and found a way to cross pollinate. So I was letting people know about other shows, eh, by way of their audiences. And so then when I
Nice.
started doing that on YouTube, I would just draw them live and hang out with those audiences, and this was fun. I moved to the
Yeah.
rural South in this time period, and I was like, I need connection to the outside world. And so what I did was, I was like, well, maybe I can get these people on for like actual interviews. And since I'd already had like a reputation for being like a good faith actor by, drawing them and promoting them, everyone said yes. And so then I started having like really well-known people on my show. So I don't know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. You do a
But
lot of
it
work
started
with
with social media.
Sam Cedar and the it's
Yep.
Majority Report, right?
Yeah, the Majority Report. Yeah, they have great group dynamics. They're always doing
Yeah.
silly stuff, so that's easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just about anybody who is considered left-wing independent media, you know,
That's
as long as they're true to that, then
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's fun. I've drawn just about everyone. I've done, I don't know, 150 interviews with them now. It's a
Great.
lot.
Who would you say is the most famous person you've drawn? And I know that that's such a like a like not really hard quantifiable thing. Like,
That I've drawn
yeah,
live, like during the interview.
sure.
Um, hmm, that's a good question. I did not draw presidential candidate Marianne Williamson, although she's probably one of the more well-known names.
Yeah,
Um, David Feldman
not by
did a lot of
name.
he former stand-up comic, used to do a lot of writing for like Conan O'Brien and stuff like
Oh,
that.
oh
And
yes, actually, I do know him.
he's
Yes,
got a really
Conan.
popular show now. I drew him live. That was
Nice.
funny.
Oh
Um,
God,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
trying to think of who. I don't know. I mean, it's funny because it's like famous to the general public or
Yeah, it's
famous online.
objective. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I really love your show because it is political, but it's also not always political, which is to
right.
say that like we can have a left-leaning person who's also a comedian and an artist. And so like it doesn't feel like it's such a heavy kind of like proselytizing show. It kind of
Yeah,
like goes all
right.
around that, especially when you had me on, you were having a week of like, this is a really hard political week. I'm going to have people on to talk about light stuff, but like, I'm definitely a left leaning person. So you're still going to get that flavor built into the base of what the show is.
Yeah, and people need that. People need options and ways to check out, but they have to be able, I mean, it like it or not, people have to be able to trust that
Mm-hmm.
person. And so when I bring on
Mm-hmm.
comic book artists, I won't draw artists, by the way. That
Oh,
is
yeah. Cook for a chef.
I've yeah, exactly. But when I bring them on, the audience has to know just by association that they're going to be left leaning, and maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about how do you
Mm-hmm.
work politics into your work. But like they're not like I just people have to be able to trust the source in order to trust the guest. And so I
Mm-hmm.
if I've built up a platform, it's sort of that. It's like I tell people I might not be a destination, but I'm definitely where you buy a ticket for the destination. So I'm a hub of sorts. So you want to be here, you know?
There's
I
yeah,
influence the influencers.
there's a term for that. I forget who created the concepts of all these personality types that you can be when interacting with others. And one of them is called Maven. And the
Hmm.
Maven is very gifted in and of themselves, but one of their major gifts is that they know everyone and everyone thinks of them positively. And so they can interact and create all of these connections in the group. And that is actually their like really best skill.
That's it. I didn't know that was a thing. I have to look that up now. That's
Yeah,
sort of it.
I'll have to ask my
Hmm.
husband because he definitely introduced me to that term. It's like somebody created that concept. And when I figure it out, I'll let you know. And of course, this show has corrections and omissions at the end. So if you just wait till the next segment, I will tell you in the next segment.
That's
uh,
awesome.
so we know a little bit about you, what you do. I would love to get to know a little bit about you as a film goer. And previously, I'd been
Mhm.
asking for Letterboxd top 4 or top 4 movies, but now I'm kind of gearing towards asking these 3 questions that are a little bit more open-ended, larger concepts of you as a filmmaker. And I don't tell them ahead of time because I want to get your in-the-moment response. So
Okay.
here's question number 1. What is the first movie you ever saw or can remember having seen?
Wow. It was probably animated, probably Disney.
Mhm, mhm. Usually that's what it is for some people. Yeah.
I want to say I probably Dumbo
All right,
or
not bad.
like in the theater, like either
Mhm.
Dumbo or Snow White or Sleeping Beauty. One of those.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta be one of those. But like the first time where I was like, okay, this is a movie. This is hands down gonna be my favorite movie forever was The Empire Strikes Back. I was born in 74
Ooh,
to give
perfect.
context. But when I saw that Star Wars movie, I was like, well, if this was the only movie they ever made, I'd be fine.
Ooh, ooh.
And that stands
That's
true.
Oh, that's a great movie. Yeah, I think the first movie I ever saw in theater was Fox and the Hound. So if you got Dumbo or Snow White or even Sleeping Beauty, you at least didn't get a super traumatizing Disney movie, which was like the height of the 80s.
I don't know, Dumbo is pretty traumatizing.
It's just right there on
When
the
they
edge.
take his
Yeah.
mom away and they're just
Ah,
their trunks are touching, it's also problematic, that
yeah.
movie. They have, like,
Yeah.
racist stuff in there. But
Yeah, it is.
I do think it was one of those, and I don't know why I would have seen the theater, but I
Mhm,
had an older brother, so I usually got to, like, they were doing things for my older brother, things that he could handle, and I was there
mhm.
just tagging along, but it was one of
Alright.
those, yeah.
Were you
I saw a
aware
lot of great movies in the theater, like Karate Kid, Rocky,
Oh,
that
come
kind of stuff, like, when they
oh,
were out in the theater, yeah.
that's great. Rocky must have been a great crowd movie, and yeah,
Maybe not
those
the
are
first one, but yeah.
So were you aware of Star Wars as a concept before you went to go see it in theaters the first time, first movie, or were you just like, "I'm totally gonna get hit sideways. I don't know what this is, space cowboy movie?"
Good question. In all likelihood, I had some toys,
Oh,
some
yeah.
action
Yeah.
figures
Yeah, fair,
from the
fair.
first movie. I think
Yeah.
I know, we didn't have like a Betamax player or laser
Mhm.
disc or a reel to reel projector. So we weren't watching any of this stuff at home, but it was so like saturated by the time the second movie came out. I'm sure I was
That's
aware
true.
of it. I may have even thought as a kid that I was just watching Star Wars and didn't register that it was a sequel. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I from day one, I've been the kind of moviegoer who just sits down and I not like draw a blank, but I just fully submit. I'm
That
in.
is
I'm
good.
not sitting there trying to think. I'm not trying to figure stuff out. I'm not criticizing it unless it is something obvious like, "Oh my god,
Mhm.
they've done this a million times. Why are they doing this?" But I think that at that age, I was sitting there just like, um, every second of it was the greatest thing I had ever seen, and but of course, I was, like, so young, but
Yeah.
also, yeah, I was probably, I don't know, 6, I think? 6 or s yeah, I was, like, 6 years old, but I think at that point, I was, um somehow I knew it was better than everything else, and I had no way of, like, measuring that. I just knew. I was like, there's a Muppet up there, uh, they're doing effects I've never seen, like, anywhere." Like, it was just hands down, like, convincing, and, like, I was
Yeah.
sold.
Yeah, it is, from the mouth of babes we get the purest truth. Like, when a
There
kid
you go.
like a movie, it's just they're in their bones, they like it, and I, as an adult, want to go back to those points. If a movie can make me completely forget that I'm even in a room, just make me forget that time is passing, make me engage like that, I am looking for that. That is such an ideal situation, because a
Yeah.
lot of times, especially lately, there's the like, oh Jesus, still an hour, huh?
Well, and being a fan of things really does sort of like change you as like so I make comic books and I read a lot of comic books. So I can't read a comic book without counting the number of panels per page. And it's sort of like it's like a problem I have. So like you may
Oh
very well
man.
watch movies and sit there going, I can see what's happening right off camera now. I get it. I can assume what the director and everyone standing around is doing. This is probably not the first take. Like, you know what I mean? You could start to, read into it and look at it from a structural or like a industry sort of perspective instead of just purely as a fan. So I know what you mean by that.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite things to do when I'm sitting with my husband watching a movie and a scene is just dead terrible, terrible as hell, and it ends, I'll turn to him and I'll go, "That wasn't one take. They had many takes. That was the best take.
Wow.
We saw the best they got."
Yeah.
Ugh.
My thing is I can always I think I can always tell when actors film things and the other one wasn't there the same day. I think
Yes.
that happens a lot. Yeah.
Yes, it does. It does. A great example of that is the back end of Groundhog Day, because Andy McDowell hated Bill Murray so much that they could not be on set on the same time. So almost all of it is shot in turnarounds because they're not there at the same time.
Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't know that. I gotta watch it again. We used to have
Yes,
Groundhog Day parties at this house I lived in my 20s, and we would play that on a
it's
loop.
great, great film. Yeah, play it on a loop, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great film. It's so sad that Murray was so difficult to work with that he ruined his
Mm.
relationship with McDowell and with Raimi. Like Raimi passed and they still never fixed their relationship because of how he behaved on that film.
Oh, no kidding. I assume he and Chris Elliott are still fine.
Ah, yeah. Believe it or not, he and Chris Elliott totally fine.
Yeah.
Uh, my next question for you: what movie do you think you've watched over like multiple viewings the most?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, it's more than one for sure.
Yeah,
Like, cause
yeah.
there are a handful of movies that I can just watch endlessly and never get tired of it. And those are
Mhm,
generally like if I'm sitting around going, what should I watch? I won't look for something new. I'll first look for
mhm,
something I've seen.
mhm.
Um, I don't know. That's a tough one. Because I could say, oh, I've seen Star Wars Empire Strikes Back a million times. Everyone has. I mean, that's not that uncommon.
Well,
I
let me
think
let
that
me, reframe it. If
okay.
this movie was on TV right now, would you still watch even though it was halfway into the movie? Like, you've seen it so many times, you'll watch it over and over again, and it doesn't matter where it is when it starts.
Okay, that's great because okay, good because there's a lot of movies that I'm like, well, it's not the same thing. It'd be like looking at half a painting. I want to see the whole thing. So,
Yeah.
um, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, most recently, I think that is a movie where I could come into any
Nice.
point and be like, yeah, I can watch. I don't know what it is. Tarantino is always hit or miss for me. Some of
It's
his
true.
stuff I love, and some of it I'm like, not for me.
Mm.
That's fine.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
get the
Yeah,
guy makes
yeah.
movies for himself, which is cool. I get it. But like that means it won't be appealing to everyone. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I can just drop everything and watch that movie from any point, no problem. But I think for the most part,
Okay.
I would need to watch it from the beginning. So yeah, that's a good way to frame the question. I'm going to say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Nice. I could totally see that. That makes I feel the same way. Like Reservoir Dogs is in my top 4, and From Dusk Till Dawn is a movie that I will neg the rest of my entire life. I will constantly remind people that it cost $19 million to make that movie, and they used cardboard vampires at the end. Like Honora
Yeah.
it cost $1 million to make Honora and $19 million to make Dusk Till Dawn.
That goes to show. Do you ever watch a movie just for the ending? Like I'll just queue up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and watched the final scene.
Oh
Not
God,
not
yes.
the not the violent final scene when Brad Pitt's being put into the ambulance. I'll just watch the
Oh,
last 7 minutes of it.
wow.
There's something so pure and I'm laughing my ass off. I know all the lines.
Yeah, yeah.
I my wife is like, "Why are we watching this again?" I'm like, "Be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. This is a good line." You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. Do you
Yeah.
have like a movie where you could just watch one part of it over and over?
Yeah, I think that the answer for me for this question is always Tombstone. Like,
Oh, which scene? Which
oh
I'm Your
God.
Huckleberry? Like right at the
On
end when he
the
gets it?
last scene when he's talking just before he passes, I really do love that. I think that he's so incredibly good in that role. Um, any of the shootout scenes, there's just so I would watch see country music channel used to play it whenever they weren't playing music, and I would always just be like, "Whatever point it is, just put it on." It's such a comforting and easy movie to watch for me. It's not a top 4 movie, but it's like "Oh, yeah, you can throw that on again." Either that or Big Trouble in Little China also has a lot of like, "Oh, yeah, just put that on again. It doesn't
Oh,
matter where we
Kurt
are."
Russell fan, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
those are do you like Bone Tomahawk?
I actually haven't seen that one yet. I guess I
Oh,
should.
really?
Yeah.
Well, this will come up later, but Richard Jenkins is in that. And I normally make it a point to watch all his stuff except this one exception.
Except this one exception. All right.
Mhm.
One last question. If we were to end this interview and you were going to go watch a movie, and it could be any movie you've seen before, any movie that's currently out, or any movie that is not yet currently out, like you have this magic wand and you could be like, I'm watching this movie. What movie?
Nosferatu. I haven't seen it. I'm hearing I'm hearing so many good things. I'm starting to get that what do they call it? That feeling of being left
FOMO.
out. Yeah,
FOMO.
right, of missing out. Um
Yeah.
it's I can rent it on Apple Movie Now for like $20 and I'm like, I'm gonna wait, and I generally don't see things in the theater anymore because although
Hmm.
I love going to the movie theater with like a group of friends, I don't have like a
Yeah.
group of friends where I live now because I'm out in the
Hmm.
middle of nowhere. But there's and like you go to the movies now and I could be annoyed quickly. I'm just that age. So I'd much rather I built a library and a home theater. I can do all this stuff at home and it's not compromised in any way. But I have to wait. So I have to wait for it to be available. So Nosferatu. If I could flip a switch, that'd be on right
Yeah.
now.
Perfect.
Dying to
I
see it.
agree with you so much. I mean, I love theaters, I love movies, but the experience is always a little bit like, oh, there was that person, nobody shut up, and the screen was at a weird angle. All things I could easily fix if I was at home.
I
Uh,
went to see The Batman. It was 11 p.m. on a Sunday night. I reserved one of those reclining chairs all the way in the far corner. Like nobody, it was way up in the corner, and there was one other person in the theater. They sat right next to me, must have seen my seat was reserved and reserved the seat next to me and had like 2 hot dogs and nachos. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I just moved. But like, come on. I mean, talk about a perfect storm.
that exact thing happened to me when I went to see The Substance. I purchased my ticket ahead
Oh,
of time. Nobody else had purchased a ticket, so I reserved the seat where I wanted to. I showed up and there was someone sitting in the seat next to my seat, which meant that they looked online and saw and put that there. And so
yeah.
I just sat somewhere else because I was like, I don't need this. This is some weird, creepy guy. I don't know who he is. And as soon as I
Yeah.
sat down, he turned to me and said, Oh, I got the seat next to you because I thought maybe we could have a meet cute. And I was like, I'm married. You didn't even know anything about the person who I don't want to interact with you.
It's
And
not what
then
movie theaters are for. Well, some, but not generally not what movie theaters are for.
did not consent to this. The movie winds up not playing for 10, 15 minutes. They come in and tell us there's been a mistake with the digital camera. They haven't loaded it in. They're going to get it loaded in. Can we wait 40 minutes? And this is like a special preview screening before the movie has even come out that I've been invited to. And I'm just like, no, I'm not sitting in this movie theater for 2 hours with that creepy asshole over there who's already like, oh, looks like we can just talk. I literally stood up, walked to the front, got a refund, and just left. I was like, I don't want to be here. Why
See
is
what I
this
mean?
the,
Like,
you know, like, uh,
and there's no way you can prevent that. It could happen. So
mhm.
you're better off just staying at home.
Especially for a movie like The Substance. You're gonna try and meet cute
Yeah.
a woman who is here to see the substance?
Yeah. I mean, I
Hmm.
have to assume people at least have the going into it knowledge of what the movie is about, you know?
A little bit, a little bit. And you're also talking to the
Weird.
one person in the movie night extravaganza group who didn't totally love Nosferatu.
Really?
So I think you've made the right decision. I think that it is beautiful, atmospheric, way too long, and a little bit
Oh,
like
okay.
just my reviews on Letterbox, people, the link will show up somewhere right now, but I highly recommend a waiting till streaming option for Nosferatu because it's you're either gonna love it or you're gonna be like, eh. There really isn't a like in between there. And I think that when you're spending $20, I don't want to spend $20 to wind up being like, eh.
Yeah. Okay. Good call.
Mhm.
Thanks. No, it's good to know. Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So, moving into what we're here to talk about today, there were two
Oh,
videos
okay.
that played just before we started where I talked about Cabin in the Woods and why I think it's exciting. And then you talked about why you hadn't seen Cabin in the Woods. And I thought that was hilarious because I didn't see Cabin in the Woods when it first came out. In fact, it was filmed in 2009 and didn't wind up coming out for 3 years because there was a bankruptcy for the company that produced it, and then Lionsgate actually came in and purchased it off the shelves, which is why it comes out at the same time as the first Thor. But you can tell that Hemsworth is like, there's no way he built that body between May and June.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, because like you said, people came up to me and said, Katie, this movie is perfect for you. One of the characters reminds me of you. This movie is
Right.
you. And when people do that to me, I'm like, I don't want a mirror held up to myself. I usually hate when that happens. Please stop. And the only other times that that has happened was with a show called The Good Place. And Goddard was also involved with the pilot episode of The Good Place. So it's like Drew Goddard and I might share a father I didn't know I had, or like we passed each other in space and time because he's also from exactly where I grew up. So, like, what is up with this guy? He has my number, but I want to hate him.
Yeah, I think people assume that okay, I like a lot of stuff. And so I assume that people think I'll like anything. But
Mm,
that's not the case. Like
no.
I like a lot of stuff and I talk about it a lot like in a geeky or nerdy way because I
Mhm.
want people to know about it and say, like I love recommending comic books to people because a lot of people have a misconception of what comics are. And these days it's usually based
Yes.
on comic book movies, right? And I'll say, "Do you read comics?" And they go, "Oh, I like those Avengers movies." And I'm like, "Well, I wasn't asking you about movies. Like I like so-called comic book movies more for movies than because they have anything to do with comics because they generally don't. Um, the characters have the same names, but I don't know, some of the traits, some of the costumes and whatever, but comic books are such an unconventional method of storytelling that they really don't translate perfectly to movies. And I think that instead of trying to figure out the best way to do that, people take liberties and they start making changes and stuff. And
Mhm.
that's where I'm like, well, I'm just okay. So maybe like I'll watch this as a movie, but that's just because I'm a movie fan. So I had the same thing where people were saying, you have to see this because we know like you love horror movies and we know like you're a classic movie fan and you watch so much and you absorb so much content. You have to see it. This was made for you. And I was like,
Mhm.
but I'm not a movie fan because something was made for me. Like
Yes.
I don't need that. Yeah, and I hate when like catering to the audience I think is a cop out and kind of lame and I haven't really seen that like work a lot. So I don't like that stuff.
It's such a hard way to recommend something to somebody because what they're trying to say is this movie is talking on a level that seems to be something that you would be able to hear. you watch a lot of movies, and I can
Hmm.
tell there's a lot of movie references rolled into the cinematography and not just told to my face. And I bet you would like that because I liked it and you seem more that than I am. But what I wind up hearing is they made this because like they wanted to break the fourth wall a bunch of times. And I'm like, I hate that.
Yeah, I want to suspend my disbelief. And
Exactly.
there were things in this movie that I was assuming like, oh, they're gonna, maybe try this or that, and then like they just totally didn't. Like I kept thinking they could play up the okay, so we could just talk about it openly,
Just
right?
we're
The
full
movie.
on talking about the
So
movie now.
when Hemsworth's character is gonna ride the bike over that chasm or
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
I thought, oh, okay, they're gonna do something. I forgot about the invisible wall, right? Like that digital wall or whatever. And so I was like, oh, they're gonna do like a super real world thing where he just goes over the edge and that'll be funny. But they didn't do that. They made it so that he was able to launch, without a ramp or anything. And then he smashes into the wall. And I said, oh, okay, so this movie, for the characters in the movie, they realize we're not in the real world. We're in a movie world. If things can happen in a movie, they can happen in this world. And they're just learning that. But it didn't really play out that way. And so I was like, oh, so it's not what I would call exactly meta. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Like I everything you thought was fake in real life is now actually real because real life is the movie world. And so I was like, okay, that's really smart, like how they did that.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't stick with that. They went from kind of doing a parody of like movie shtick to being like, no, movie shtick is we're gonna embrace movie shtick. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I was just my hopes were up a little too much.
Okay.
But I don't know.
No. I'm sorry about that. Well, I feel like there's always a line between something like Scary Movie, where it is all parody. It's all parody. The scene is
Right.
supposed to parody another scene, and all the things that are folded in are just beats between, hey, do you remember that one time when you were in the Beatles? Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Whereas this was kind of like, it would go to a trope, and just at the point where you'd be like, oh, yeah, this is that trope, it would stop and be like, this is a movie and this is this movie, so we're gonna jump over that and go in a different direction. And
But
I
did the
enjoyed
characters
that.
represent us? Did the characters represent the viewer, or were they
Mm.
living in a world where they didn't realize the fictional stuff wasn't fictional? And so, like, why didn't they realize, dude,
Mm.
if you can jump your bike like that, there's going to be some unconventional ways of getting out of this. Like, why didn't they realize, hold on a second, if zombies are real and he can jump his bike like that, I can do supernatural things or extraordinary things. But they didn't
Mm.
go that. You see what I mean? They didn't really go that route. Although,
Okay.
toward the end, those two characters were kicking a lot of ass and they seemed to be like dodging bullets left and right and succeeding where other people weren't.
I wouldn't I didn't take the bike thing as to be impossible. In fact, like, if you launched your bike at an angle, you would get a certain amount of ability to go up and over.
I thought they were going to build on that though.
I think that
But
they again, it's like there are these beats of expectation where the film is like,
yeah.
"No, that's not this movie." Like,
Yeah.
what if the Jack could just and so this is part of what happened. It was a major fight between this is co-written between Josh Whedon and Drew Goddard and Lionsgate, who picked it up and put it out at the end. They wanted what you described. Lionsgate wanted that. They wanted an
Okay.
attempt at an ability to fight back in any way. And what Goddard and Whedon were trying to say was like, no, the message of our movie is that humans innately suck. This is
Right.
never
Yeah,
meant
that's what
to.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah. The ending where they're like, hey, maybe it's somebody else's turn. I believe
Right.
in that so deeply. I belong to something called the voluntary human extinction movement, where you get sterilized voluntarily because you can't kill people. I get that. But I will not participate in creating more of us. I do believe it is our turn to die out.
Okay.
And this movie is
Okay.
such a
Yeah.
segment to be like, look at us. No matter what we do, we fuck it up. And we just make it worse just so that we can keep going. Like a little bit of bad is going to make the whole world okay. Like,
I'm sort of there with you because when people are like, you guys, the planet is dying, I'm like, nah, the planet will be fine. It won't be inhabitable, but it'll come back around. We won't. There's not a point where the planet explodes. And if it does, how do we avoid that? You're just talking about human sustainability, and that's really kind of like that's on us. I mean,
that's
oh well.
us.
So
Oh,
I'm
well.
with you on that to a degree, but like I
Yeah.
think I mean, look, I didn't finish the movie. I mean, do you want to know if I liked it or do we save that for the end?
You could go into it right now.
I thought ultimately it was so.
Okay.
I did not walk away from it going, that was great.
Uh,
But aspects of it, like I said, it was really smart for a directorial debut. Solid, right? Like good move, right? I thought it
yeah.
was very smart. I thought it was
Mhm.
well done. I would have. I just think I came away from it going, I wanted more of that behind the scenes stuff. Like they spent a long
Mm.
time on the
Yeah.
tropes, playing out
Yeah.
how tropes would play out. Like I love that it was like, oh, the guy's weed kept their chemical from working on him. I thought that
Mhm.
was hilarious, and that was in
Mhm.
a time when, marijuana wasn't, like, legalized in the way it is now, so I thought that was I was like, "Oh, cool, pro marijuana message." Like, it's not all bad. It'll
Mhm.
help you against these evil villains.
Mhm.
Um, I I thought, like, when she was making out with the wolf head on the wall and dancing and stuff and the nudity, I was like, "Okay, they're doing the horror movie tropes in the exact same way a horror movie would. Where's like the twist?" And then it wasn't until you
Mhm.
discover the trapdoor in the elevator that it was like, well, for the characters, that there was something completely different going on.
Mhm.
We knew that. And
Yeah,
so it was
you know that the
interesting
whole
to see
time.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when they cut back and forth, I was like, okay, at least, we're here for this, right? Like I
Yeah.
get this. And it actually did play out very much how a comic book would, putting those like juxtaposing the two environments side by side, like where they're all wearing like white shirts and ties, and there's
Mhm.
departments who are kind of bickering between each other and the office politics with like the horror movie stuff. I thought that was very entertaining and smart. Like, thank you for showing it to me all at the same time. But I
Yeah.
wanted it to be more like it felt like act 3 could have been
Mhm.
like, I don't know, the second half,
I agree with you on that. Like, if
you
I
know?
had to cut one scene, if there was one scene where I was like, this doesn't work for me at all, it is absolutely the making out with the wolf head scene. It's just
Yeah,
weird. I mean, I
silly.
do really appreciate that later on, the character played by Franz Kans, the stoner character, winds up
Mhm.
saying, like, "Are you not paying attention? Our friend just made out with a like, they're not
Right.
this way. This guy is our valedictorian, and he's acting like a total jock. Like, what is happening here?" And it's, obviously because the chemicals being pumped in are doing stuff to them. Uh, but even within that, I was like, this scene is just a little bit too fucking much. So
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's in no way perfect. I did really want to talk about the stoner character. Obviously, like it's a character that is smoking marijuana at that time, and like it's fun and it's funny, and usually stoners die first. But in Russian literature, there is something called the idiot. And it is a character who is actually way more intelligent than everyone else because of his ability to kind of step back and see the forest. It's not just see trees, but see the entire forest. And I loved the use of that here in this story. Like it felt a little elevated for what is should just be a stupid horror movie.
No, yeah. Okay, I thought that guy was great from the get-go. I thought it was hilarious. Didn't he have a bong that looked like a travel mug or something like that at the beginning?
They do
Like, and
make
he's
that
driving
now
around with
too
it.
because of this film. They have made that. that piece of accoutrement.
They have, that's funny. Now it's like the first thing that hit me was like, wow, that guy's got a lot of white privilege. Okay, whatever. Moving on, right, from that. Like that's not something they would have like built on in 2011 or 2009 or whenever, right?
Mhm.
But like nowadays it would be like, come on, there's only one reason you can drive around like that, really. But well,
Yes.
and nowadays it would just be like legal, but
Mhm.
and a lot more tolerant. But
Yeah, well, not while
the
you're driving, but
right, but like the way when he shows up, for me, I was like, okay, I, I've always thought those characters were like, like an obvious trope, but
Mhm,
typically relatable for me,
mhm,
just personally, like growing up, like, an aspiring stoner. And so
mhm,
then when I saw this character, I was like, not only is this relatable, but he's likable,
mhm,
and he right away struck me as an underdog. And so I was
mhm,
focused on that guy more than any other character. And when he wasn't on camera, I knew this one thing I hate is when a character is off camera, they might as well
mhm.
just be staring at a wall, not doing anything. Like I
Yeah,
want to know enough about the character to assume what they're doing off camera. And I assumed he was
right,
just
yeah,
burning one
yeah.
or tripping on something like nature or
Mhm,
whatever, right? Like I could totally imagine what he was doing. And
mhm,
so then I was like, I want to be in the room where that character is more than any of these other people. So I was really glad like he ended up being there at the end. And she turned the gun on him like she was going to take him out, right? And
mhm,
I was like, oh wow, he's like he is the hero of the movie if there is one. I was on his side the whole time. And the fact that he could handle his weed and it wasn't making him dumb and it was fighting the chemicals they were pumping into the cabin, I thought that was like a genius move. I thought that was really smart.
yes, because the idiot, you mistake they're stupid, you never pay attention to
Right.
them, but they're paying attention to everything, and so
I
being
must
an
be the
observer.
idiot in my universe. I'm the idiot character because I was like, I want to know more about that guy.
Yeah, there's a great novel by Dostoevsky called, The Idiot, definitely check it out, can really dive into that character. I think, and I would love to know your opinion on that, because I'm a little bit biased. I obviously associate with the stoner character because I myself am a stoner. I've worked in the cannabis industry for a very long time.
There you go.
I thought that they were probably the closest stand-in for the audience. I feel like you were supposed to identify with that character, and you're supposed to feel when it's like when they're at the gas station talking to the first old guy. Everybody's just like, "Well, I guess we're getting gas here," and he's like, "It's closed. Does nobody notice how weird this guy is? This is fucking ridiculous." And everybody's just like, "Yes, this is how." Like that's probably the closest for me.
Yeah, there are stoners who will try and get, like whatever weed they could. And this guy struck me as a connoisseur, or maybe somebody who was doing like I'm serious. Like I could
Mhm,
see him
mhm,
like with his own homegrown stash, right? So
yeah,
like, no, I had respect for him beyond just being like good time Charlie or whatever. Like I knew this guy
uh-huh.
was more grounded in a way. And I wanted, what's his name? Mordecai, that sort of gatekeeper at the gas station, that old guy.
Yeah, yeah, the old guy.
I I would not call it a plot hole, but like when he phones in
And they're
to
laughing
the
at Bradley
office guys.
Whitford, and there's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're not, I'll take you off speaker."
Yeah, that was funny. I love that. But with the
Mhm,
character, I was like, "Oh, okay, so we'll get more of him." And then we didn't. And I kept thinking like, maybe that's a miss. Like I'm
mhm.
not saying like for all I know, it's like a deleted scene post credit or something. But
Fair
but
enough,
like
yeah.
and not like a literal plot hole. Like I don't think we need to know about this guy. But that would have been cool to kind of bring that back around at least one more time because
Mhm,
I don't know, you had like the introduction, a little follow up, and then that was it. And I was like, well, it kind of comes off kind of gimmicky, but whatever. There was so
mhm.
much more to the movie.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can we could take a hit there, but
Mm.
Jenkins and Whitford and that's his name, right? Bradley Whitford.
Bradley Whitford. Yes,
Yeah,
love him.
you can drop those two guys together or separately into any movie, and you will be like, they don't even have to really do anything beyond their regular routine, and it will work. every
Yeah.
time. They're so perfect at what they do. I think Richard Jenkins is one of my favorite actors, and his characters are never different enough for me to really justify that. But I think that's why I like him. Like, I
Yeah.
I love the movie Killing Them Softly. Have you seen that?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
It's based on a novel that it's a pretty literal adaptation. They updated it with some modern day like politics interspliced. Because it was, and they set it like during the housing crisis or the financial crisis of like 2007, 2008, as opposed to like its original setting, which was when it was written in the 70s. And I always imagine like Richard Jenkins, because you only see him at work. You don't see
Mhm.
his
Yeah.
character doing anything else. And I like to imagine that because you could do this. Check this out. What if Richard Jenkins' character as the father in Step Brothers, like when he goes to work, he's the character in Killing Them Softly who negotiates hits with Brad Pitt. Like, what if that was the same character?
I
Like, what if
love
it
that.
existed in the same universe?
Yes.
But
Yes.
you could do it because Jenkins doesn't really shift enough
Mhm.
for that not to be the same character. He might present himself differently when talking to a hitman versus his adult immature kids, right? Like at home. But like that to me is the perfect way to illustrate how Richard Jenkins is just a beloved actor and character player, although he doesn't really redefine his characters that much. And I think that's why I like it.
There's a style of acting that is the exact opposite of method acting. It's called Brechtolian acting. And in Brechtolian
Oh, okay.
acting, the intent is to make sure the audience is always fully aware that you are an actor playing a character. And some actors, they're Brechtolian. I think Denzel Washington, even when he is his best, is still Denzel Washington. He's not doing
Right.
a different
Hmm.
voice for no matter who the guy. I don't care if it's ancient Rome, he still sounds like this.
Yeah. Right.
And that's great.
Same.
I love Denzel
Mhm.
Washington. That totally works. As an actor, if you carve out any kind of niche that is working for you, don't fuck with it. Just go with what you've got. It really does work. And what's funny here is, have you seen Bad Times at El Royale?
Yeah, that's the one with the hotel that's right on,
The Nevada
it's
California
like,
border, and
yeah,
it's
right,
got
in
Jeff
Reno.
Bridges and
Yeah, yeah.
Cynthia Erivo. That
Yeah, that
is
was a weird one.
only other film Drew Goddard has written and directed.
Have you seen it?
I just saw it last
You
night.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
It's
because it's the same
okay.
writer-director as this film, so I wanted to know what he is like. And it too has this kind of feeling of like, there's a great buddy chemistry between two of the characters that's fucking hilarious. There's a lot of stuff happening, and sometimes when I'm with these characters, I wish I could go back to the buddy characters. And maybe this would be better as a limited series than a movie.
Mm, I
And
often
I
think that.
that could happen here with Cabin in the Woods. This might be better as a limited series. I would even just love a series about The Office.
Yes, look, there's okay, so I was thinking of spinoffs. Okay, first of all, when I was looking for this, like, to watch it, there is a series called The Cabin in the Woods, but it's
Okay.
like real life. It's
Okay,
each
that's what I thought.
episode. Yeah, and I was like, they just stole the name. Like, that's really misleading. Because I was like, oh wow, would they do like an anthology series? That might be
Mhm.
interesting. Because then that would be the Office guys, or like wherever, because they're all over the world. So there's a lot to work with. You could do the Japanese one, they're all over the place. And you could do the different styles of horror for
Yeah.
every show. It would be an amazing
Ooh,
series.
different
Like,
director for
why
each
aren't they doing that?
episode based
Yes.
on the
Why aren't they
style?
doing that? They
They haven't
and
listened to this episode yet.
What right, and you could joke around about how, like, people are always confusing Korean and Japanese, and it's like they're obviously different, but you're showing, like, your lack of cultural diversity by assuming they're the same. You know what I mean? You could play up
Yeah.
on that. There's
Yeah.
so much to do,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, they killed off the characters. Otherwise, I'd say the stoner. And what was the name of his character? I
God,
can't
I gotta
remember.
look it up. I can remember the
It was
actor.
Marty.
Marty, yes.
Marty, like I wish that was like a through line. Like I would
Mhm,
love to see where, okay, this is the one guy who survived but also saw behind the curtain enough. And this is
mhm,
a real like behind the curtain kind of thing, right?
mhm.
Like Wizard of Oz style behind the curtain. But like to and I almost wonder if like they built off that idea of the wizard behind, it was just a guy behind the curtain pulling levers. But
Yeah,
like they that guy could have gone on to achieve some sort of like executive level position in the organization, or I don't know, maybe like even like keeping them more honest or something,
mhm.
or sincere. I don't know, but they killed him off. So that's not going to happen,
No.
but they could do so much more with this, and I'm kind of shocked that they haven't.
They
I'm
could easily
surprised.
prequel. I think part of the problem here is it's a little bit of a tainted tree in that Josh Whedon co-wrote half of this and nobody wants to touch him right now.
Yeah, see, and I hate that. Like I agree with that, right? Like don't touch him.
Mm.
Fine. But
Yeah.
like
There's so many
it
other people involved.
that's what bums me out. And this happens like weekly in comics and pop culture, but like it's happening all the time. It just happened in a big way where they canceled a whole Netflix show. And I'm just like, all the people who were
The
staking their hopes and
actors.
dreams on that career
Yep.
in front of the camera and behind the camera, it's just messed up. Like I really hope they're
Mhm.
compensated. And it reminds me of like, am I wrong about this? Have you seen Jodorowsky's Dune? That documentary about Alejandro developed Dune before David Lynch took over the movie project. And he
No.
essentially, yeah, it's a great documentary. He went on to turn his script was so far from the book. They were like, you can't do this, man. This is a different, this isn't Dune anymore. He turned it into a comic that's been going ever since called the Meta Barons. And it's
Oh,
very
okay.
hardcore. Yeah, it's been going forever. He basically rewrote Dune. And they're like, you can't do that. So, but he assembled the team, the creative team that Ridley Scott ended up using for Alien, because they were, and I hope I have this exactly right. It's been a while since I remember I said like I can't tap into these databases accurately, so I could be wrong, but my recollection is that Jodorowsky put together his creative team, and then when they took him off the project, they said, "Well, this team's got to do something." You know what I mean?
Yes.
So they used them, and it was like Geiger and stuff like that.
Ah,
So they did use these
ah.
people,
I
but
love
so
when
that's what
that
I mean. When
happens.
you cancel something because somebody deserves it, right? It's like, get rid of
Mhm.
this guy. Like he
Yeah,
shouldn't be involved. But that shouldn't, like, there's so many other people involved. I mean,
I
probably
think, yeah.
thousands, right?
It gets to a point like with Sandman, the IP is owned by Gaiman in such a way that there's no way
Yeah.
to continue the show without having to pay to his estate or pay to his anything, and like that's like it's too high up. You cut too big of a head off of this dragon. You can't keep it going.
You know what? I do have to tell you this. Like, even though at the end of the day, I thought, and I want to get to the parts of this movie that I loved, and
Yeah.
and but I will tell you this: this movie gave me a good sort of barometer is the right word, but it let me, because there's nothing in the movie where I was like, look, I watch everything with a lefty perspective where I go, that's problematic. That's problematic. They shouldn't have done that. They should have known better. Why is it only a few years later we know better? You should have known better then, right? So
Mhm.
there's that
Mhm.
happens to me a lot. And I personally am always willing to course correct and apologize for things I've done in order to be more inclusive, right? And just a better person for everyone else's sake, not just mine. But like this movie helped me realize like there's a lot of stuff that came out afterward that is kind of not cool. Like I just um and maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is just me being overly critical, but like I watched The Cabin in the Woods right between The White Lotus season 1 and 2. And then I watched
Oh.
White Lotus season 2, and I was like it just helped me to go back far enough with The Cabin in the Woods to to go, well, they could have done some very anti-feminist stuff here, right? They could have
Mhm.
done some very problematic tropey stuff here, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
not
almost
just
20 years
teenage
ago. Yeah.
comedy, sex comedy, or teenage
Mhm.
horror slasher stuff that you expect. But like I thought White Lotus season 2 is like very anti-feminist.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it. I couldn't make it through the first 2 episodes of White Lotus normal, season 1. I have a threshold that's very thin for, rich people being bad. I just, like I don't like watching it. It seemed like
There
everyone in this
are
show sucks.
there are no redeemable characters.
Yeah. Ugh.
I was watching it purely to see, like, at the beginning they introduce a death and I was like, well, I would love to see who dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, my wife and I were like, we'll just watch this to take bets on who doesn't make it, right? And then by the end we were like, we don't want anyone to make it, right?
Mhm.
And it was really funny because there's a an actor who plays, so you referenced Gladiator 2, which I assume you've seen, right?
Mhm.
So one of the Caesars is a son in White Lotus who's like real spoiled and bratty and
Oh,
loses his phone. He's like, "Mom, I need a phone." Right? And
okay.
he's like a little
Yeah.
shit. And so it's funny to see him as like one of the Caesars because that's the only context I have for him is being like spoiled brat. So anyway,
Good casting. I guess
typecasting.
he plays spoiled brat well.
Yeah, yeah. But I thought that was good because it helped me go, no, no, no. You don't have to do this sort of like I have to get all the way through a season to go, wow, they were really anti-female. Like that's not cool. Like
Yeah.
girls
Yeah.
either they're like really needy and stuff. And I was like, this is bad. Like I don't like this. But and so I probably won't see season 3. But let me tell you what I loved about The Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
You know that big red button that they push and that lets
Oh, yeah.
everyone out,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah, yeah.
monsters?
Yeah.
I love big red buttons, right? Like that is the fucking coolest for me. I love seeing that kind of stuff where there's a single button and that button was terribly unprotected. Like that's you want
Why
to
that
like
button?
put
Why do you
that
have a button that would do that? That
that's,
purges
to
everything?
me,
Why is that there?
that is a trope, right? And I think maybe people like miss that a
Yeah.
big one single button is yet another
Okay.
thing that you would see like in Goofy. That's kind of like the cartoon aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Like one
Mhm.
button, okay. And you don't even need like in real life, for like the nukes, you need two guys each with a key at the same time. You don't
Yeah.
even need that, right? So like I thought that was kind of funny.
There
But
isn't even a, like, little thing that pulls off. It's just open. It doesn't even have a plastic cover.
like they just walked in. It was like in a security guard booth or something, and that guy was on his break, I guess, but like really bad.
I've worked
uh
retail and people accidentally call the cops all the time by accidentally hitting the, like, silent trigger underneath the register, like, going like this. So, can you
that should be
imagine, "Ooh, I
protected.
leaned on the purged all
Right.
fucking creatures button again,
I
sorry."
sneezed and hit it. Yeah, that'd be bad. But I think okay, so that elevator area, like
Mhm.
where all the elevator doors, I love that scene and how everyone was like from there on. I was like, this is the best movie because people were
Mhm.
dying right away, right?
Mhm.
Like they would just that guy doesn't make it. Oh, nobody's gonna make it, and it's a bloodbath. And I thought I don't know if they were referencing The Shining with all that blood
Yes,
being at the
definitely.
elevators,
Yeah.
but I assume they were.
Yeah.
That to me was that's kind of why I wanted that to be the second half of the movie instead of the final act because like I really took a lot of pleasure from that. I said, "Oh,
Yes.
the slasher aspect of what was happening in, the woods is what they're trying to prevent in real life." And so when it happens in real life outside of the cabin, it's maximum horrible. And so that's where I was like, oh, okay, so everything that is scary and creepy and dreadful in their staged version of life is way worse in real life. And so at the end, when I love that whole thing. That was just so great watching and especially like the Pinhead character who seemed like he was relating to them and he was like, you get it, like his mood was very like I'm a massive Hellraiser fan anyway, so like I was like, naturally that's my favorite character. I kind of
Mhm.
wish they had kept going with that.
There
But
was just so
when
many stuff. Yeah, it's hard to get. I wanted more time
yeah,
for each one. Yeah.
yeah, that's why they could do more with it. I'm surprised they
Mhm.
haven't. But when they get to the very end and I was like, well, okay, is everyone going to die or not? I was like, they have to. They have to all die. The big hand comes up and I assume it's the end of everything. But that has to be that way because things that were horrible in the staged version of life only get maximized and elevated in the real world, what's really going on behind the scenes. And so I was like, they kind of have to. I was like, nobody's going to make it. All these guys are going to die. It's just a matter of time. So I thought that was very satisfying. I
Mhm.
almost like that nobody walked away at the end.
And I
I
like
thought
that
that was
they
good.
chose that as well. Like they could have chosen to save humanity, and it's not like, oh, they fucked up and they didn't. We're like, no, they were like, we're making an active decision to not do this, which is again coming back to Dark Souls. There's when you get to the end of Dark Souls, you have the choice to reignite the flame and save humanity, or turn it off because you've seen the entire game what that has done to everyone you've ever encountered. And
Yeah.
so you get two different endings. You don't have to pick one or the other. You as a player can pick it. And I can see in that moment where certain viewers were like, no, I pick to light the flame. Who doesn't pick to light the flame? And so that's part of the divisive nature, I think, of this film, is that people didn't like that ending.
Did you? Well, and I mean, once again, don't play to the audience, especially in a movie that totally plays to the audience, right? Like, sorry, we disappointed you right at the end of the movie that you're supposed to love because you're that guy or whatever. Like, that's a twist, right? Like, that's a twist
Yeah.
on the viewers. I think it's pretty. I didn't realize that, but in hindsight, that's classic. Um, were there any characters that you wanted to live? Like, of course, I wanted Richard Jenkins' character to live, but I didn't care. I mean, that would be
I
fine if he died.
I think that the way that they killed Bradley Whitford made you okay with it, because he finally gets to see the merman the whole time. You're like, all right, if you're gonna go, you're gonna go. And like that whole whiteboard scene, everything that, if you pause and look at all the different things on the list, there are stuff from Evil Dead, stuff from different movies. My favorite is it just says Kevin at one of the names. Do you know who that might
Yeah.
be a reference to? It's a comic book reference.
Oh, Evan.
Kevin is the character that Elijah Wood played in Sin City.
Oh, and Sin City, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay.
So,
Oh,
like,
that's hilarious.
Kevin was one of the
Okay.
options. We don't wind up seeing him come out of the boxes because they don't want to get sued, but Kevin was one of the options.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, wow. Yeah, I should have looked at the whiteboard. That's, you know what? That's a comic book just came out with a zoom in of a whiteboard from a comic book editor's office that I have seen photos of online and tried my best to zoom in and like enhance so I could read what was on the board. Now it's
Yeah.
like I just had to wait. Now it's nice high resolution, but that is funny. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Sigourney Weaver, I was like, okay,
Good
she's only in this
reference.
because of
Oh,
Alien,
yep.
but I
They hid
get
her from
that.
the
Like, you
cast as
can't leave
well.
that out.
Yeah, they didn't tell anybody she was
Oh,
going to be
really?
in there, and it wasn't until it came out that people even knew she was in the movie.
That would be huge if you're in the cast and you're like, holy shit, I'm in a movie with Sigourney Weaver. That's a
Yes.
big, that's a big deal. That's really cool. Um, I thought like it. Okay, the movie made me want to rewatch all the stuff they were referencing,
Yes.
and I think that I don't know if they were like somebody must have thought of that. I don't know if that was intentional though. Like if
Mhm.
they were like, we're making this so people will remember they love this stuff and go back and watch it, or if they just assume people are so obsessed with it they're watching it anyway. But it's been a long time for me since I've seen Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2. And I used to watch
Yeah.
those like, every other month, if not more.
I think that that's the
But
intent for a lot of filmmakers. Like Tarantino will always tell you what films inspired his film with the intent that he wants you, like every film
yeah.
nerd, he just wants you to watch the film that he likes so that you can talk to him about the film that he likes. So he made this movie that's kind of like that film so that you'll go watch that film so you can talk to him about the film that he likes.
Right. And I mean, I wanna go back and watch, like, Friday the 13th. I wanna
Mhm.
go back and watch I haven't seen the original Friday the 13th in 30 years
Oh,
probably.
really?
But,
I
like,
just
I
recently
watched that
rewatched
so
it.
much as a kid that
Yeah.
I feel like I don't need to, but now it's like, no, I wanna see people not be able to get away from someone running top speed while he's just walking. Like, I do wanna see that.
I
I
want
wanna
that
see where
stress stream. Yeah.
yeah, and I wanna see where people, like, drop their hat running away from the murderer, but they stop to pick up their hat. Like,
The
I really wanna see that
$5
again.
hat, let it go.
I wanna see that again so bad now, but yeah, I just it made me wanna go back and watch them. So I
Mhm,
can't hate the movie,
mhm,
right? But in terms of people saying, "You're gonna love this," I didn't love it. I I get it.
mhm,
I would have been fine not having seen it,
mhm.
but I knew that it was gonna like, the second it started, I was like, "This is gonna make for good conversation because 'cause they're doing this stupid movie thing here."
Mhm.
Throwing the football out the window, she doesn't realize she's not wearing pants, there's a stoner. I
Yes,
was like,
right.
this is gonna be good for conversation." And if a
Yeah.
movie look, a movie at a minimum should be entertaining. It
Yes.
should it should always generate some sort of thought afterward, it should stick with you in some way, or discussion. And I
Mhm.
think if a movie leaves you going, "Yeah, I saw it, it was good. Anyway, what do you wanna do?" That's kinda lame.
That's
So
the
I would
worst
say,
for me.
like, I can't give this less than 3.5 stars, I guess.
Good. But
So it was good for that.
before we get to the final questions I'm gonna ask you, I wanna ask you one more thing. Did you
Okay.
see the film 1997 film, The Cube?
Oh, yeah. And if I'm remembering it, it's people trapped it's just like a few people trapped in a, like, confined space in a cube.
Yep.
It was a
Yep.
metaphor for something that I thought would okay, so look,
The
you gotta
perils of
understand.
modern day society was
Yeah.
I'll let
I
you in on a little secret. I hated that
okay.
movie.
I don't remember liking it, and I also remember at the time I was living in Boulder, Colorado, where there was a lot of coffee shop philosophy being thrown around, a lot of big words and people trying to sound important, and, side by side with literal cowboys and literal, hippies. So that was,
Mhm.
you get a balance,
Mhm.
but that stuff always kind of wears on me. So,
Yeah.
I want to, it's like I said, I want to let go. I want to sit down to a movie and go, you got me,
Yeah.
here I am. I'm open to this, whatever it is. I
Mhm.
accept it. And that's why I don't see twist at the end unless it's something like, well, that was in a really famous Kurosawa movie. Like you should have known
Get
to
this.
disguise that a little
This
more
is
or
just
whatever.
Rashomon. I know how this ends.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, one of my favorite Kurosawas is High and Low. Have you seen that?
yeah, yes, yeah.
So, spoiler of High and Low. If are we cool doing spoilers here?
Yeah, we'll spoil it. It just the people press forward or mute or whatever you need to do to not.
The kidnappers intend to grab somebody and they grab somebody else without realizing it. That to me broke the mold on that concept. And so to see anybody do it now or later and not like trick me into thinking that that's not what it is lame. So
Yeah.
if I'm watching a movie and I go, I'll give you an easy one. If I'm watching a movie and I go, man, if this just ends up that the main character has a split personality, I'm going to be disappointed because this isn't a movie about split personalities. That's the same as like saying it was all a dream,
Yeah, it's
like,
my yeah, so,
yeah. So
Jacob's ladder scenario.
Cabin in the movie, Cabin in the Woods was a movie about it was all a dream, not at the end, it was all a dream. And so the cube wasn't that. Right? The cube
No.
was just like, okay, write a book, maybe I'll buy it. It doesn't have to be this movie. That's how I remember it.
And the
But
acting
I'm
is
big snob about this shit. So,
bad, bad in The Cube.
oh, it
I
was. So,
do
is there
not
anybody famous in
recommend.
it? Anybody
No, no. It gets
recognizable?
lauded for being, like, low budget, but very thoughtful, and I think that it is the kind of movie where you're like, "Oh, this is a Sartre play. This is, like, a 45-minute play that you guys made into a movie, and you got some actors who not even that good." The reason I bring it up
Like
is bec
THX, like that?
I would say
what
that
is it?
it's even worse than that. It's almost like the
Oh,
acting
okay.
in Repo, the genetic opera.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, don't live in the world you're living in. Don't know any more about that. No, sweet child, stay there. That might be the
Okay.
worst ever horror musical to ever be made, in my opinion.
Wow.
Repo the
Okay.
genetic opera. Do not
Is
confuse
it
with
based on
Repo
Repo
Man.
Man? Oh, okay.
No,
Okay. All right.
no, it's not based on. It's like a trauma film kind of level of acting. And this, the reason I
Okay.
bring up The Cube is because so much of the office sequences in Cabin in the Woods, it's so hard to tell the title of this because it's so generic. It's like Being There. It's just this ephemeral title to hold on
Right.
to. Um, are based on the way that that was set up and designed, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. It's very interesting, and like we say, it's very storyboarded because it's all these boxes and boxes. That movie doesn't really work for me because it is only in that one location and it needed something else. And it feels like Cabin in the Woods is an attempt to be like, look, we're going to build off of what works in the office and the cube situation, but we're going to add in this slasher cabin. And I do agree with you that I wish that they had at least, like, you don't need to extend the office scene, but I wish you had cut the cabin scenes so that they were equal, so that at the end of the cabin scenes is the exact midpoint of the movie, and then the ending half is what we get. I think that pacing
Oh,
would
yeah.
have been better. I agree entirely.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much room for more. Like,
Yeah.
you think of all the sequels out there where you're like, you didn't need to do that, but this would be great.
Why
I
not? I
don't
mean,
know.
it's
Maybe they will. Still
20
time.
years later, all those actors are still around. Jesse Williams is just left Grey's Anatomy, so he's available. I did not remember he was in this movie until it started. The character who's supposed to be like maybe there to meet cute, our ginger haired protagonist. I was just like, oh
Hmm.
God, everybody who is in this is like just starting. It's Hemsworth's first major role after playing Captain Kirk's dad in like one scene.
That was a great single scene, by the way. I
Yeah,
love
that's how
that scene.
good
I
he
thought that was
did.
great. Yeah.
Damn straight.
He nailed that. Yeah. And
Uh,
I like Kenneth Branagh's Thor a lot.
oh yeah.
Not really after that. I'm a
Bra
huge Kenneth Branagh fan.
Brana is a Brechtolian actor.
Yeah, well, but um forgetting why am I forget see this is I don't have the database when Wallander. Have you seen Wallander?
No.
He okay, so I guess this is debatable, but Wallander, it was originally Swedish, I believe. It's a series of
Okay.
books,
Okay.
and it's about a like a detective, a cop who is so invested in the case that he won't sleep, won't eat, and it just wears him down. So by the end of the case, he is just like nearly broken. And they're constantly like, you got to stop. You can't do this anymore. And that only works like in the original Swedish adaptation for television. They
Mm.
made it a little funny and light, and it only works with somebody like Brana who brings this like weight to it. And so if
Mm.
he's known for that, okay, that's why I say it's debatable. But check it out because he kind of breaks from that. Like he does
Okay.
worn down and stressed out in a way that
Okay.
I haven't seen other actors really pull off. And
Cool.
Wallander went for like 3 seasons. It's really good.
I'll have to give my own what if I don't like it by trying something
Yeah,
out like
okay, let
that.
me know. Yeah, let me know.
So as we approach the end of the episode, I asked the same questions. I'm going to ask them right now for you. Did you like this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. Did,
I'm not
did
gonna run out. One, I don't think I could run out and tell people to see it. They'll be like, "You just saw this? Give me a break, dude." But like on the other hand, I don't think I would be like, "You gotta see it." But yeah, I mean, it was. I liked it. I liked it.
Okay. Okay.
It
Would
was
you
fine.
yeah, my next question is would you recommend other people see it?
Um, I wouldn't know how. I mean,
Mhm.
if somebody was like, "I want to watch a horror movie, but not like traditional," I'd say,
Mhm.
"Yeah, okay, I got one for you." But I'm not
Mhm.
sure how else I would go about recommending it
Mhm.
because I'm a huge movie nerd. There's so many other things I would recommend first. But if somebody was
Okay.
looking for something that fit this specific, niche, I would say, yeah, I got one for you.
Absolutely. I
So
think
it's good for that.
I always put the caveat on this one where I'm like, if you don't like movies that are referential or like kind of referencing themselves or making a meta commentary or being a little satirical in their own presentation, like a little pun
Mhm.
dog or a little wink, tongue in cheek, this is never going to be a flavor you like.
Yeah, and I wait for people to tell me. I don't go out of my way recommending movies unless somebody's like looking for a recommendation. If somebody and if somebody's like, "Oh, you watch a lot of movies, what should I watch?" I'll just pick their brain a little first. I'll say, "What do you
Hmm.
like? What are you
Yeah.
into?" And I can
Yeah.
definitely recommend something you should watch, but I'm not just going to lead with, "You got to see this," because well, what if they don't like it?
What if they don't like it?
One time I was talking about Das Boot to a guy at work, and he went and saw it. Have you seen Das Boot?
Yes.
The submarine and he went back and watched it and said, "Dude, that movie you recommended sucked." And I was like, "I did not recommend that." I wouldn't recommend. That's a tough one. Like you got to be a
Yeah.
huge like you got to be watching it to study it,
Yeah.
not to like be entertained. I so I'm really careful about recommending movies at all, really.
Absolutely. I think the only time I get aggressive about recommending something is when I know that its success will only continue if people watch it. Like
Oh,
when
yeah.
Scavengers Reign got that re-release on Netflix and they might continue to a season 2, I was in everybody's face about like, this is the most beautiful art I have ever seen in an animation. These people are brilliant. And I was just a pain in the ass about it. It did get canceled
I
though.
Oh, it did. Oh, that's the only reason I watched it was because you recommended it. And I was like, "Oh, but I saw something about that. Now I'll check it out." There's another animated or series on HBO now.
That just came out, and it has the guys who did Scavengers Reign
It looked
paired with
similar.
Mike Judge got involved with
I
them, and the
gotta
2 of
see it
them are
then.
doing it. It just had its premiere this Sunday. I have not yet
Do you
watched it.
like it? Oh, okay.
I can't imagine I won't because the subject matter is similar to Scavengers Reign, and I love everything that Mike Judge does. I think he's
I paused
brilliant.
on it and I was like, that I said to my wife, I was like, "Doesn't that look like Scavenger's Reign?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "We're
It
gonna have to
is.
circle back."
It
Okay, well,
is.
at least they're not permanently canceled from making stuff.
Now somebody immediately stepped in, and to have Mike Judge in the animation world step in and be like, "I wanna work with you." That's like,
Huge.
"Okay, you actually won. Fuck season 2 of Scavengers Reign.
Yeah, right. We can live. We'll live.
We'll circle back. I'm sure when you
That's
become super famous, they'll let you finish that."
yeah. Yes, exactly. And I mean, that stuff wasn't like dated. I've never seen anything like that content. So like they could easily go back to that.
So beautiful. That and Blue-Eyed Samurai, are the 2 things this year that I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
"I don't care what you like this."
Have you seen Paprika? You ever see
Yes,
that?
I am the biggest
Yeah.
Satoshi Kon fan to the point where it is a
Oh,
pain in
cool.
the ass for people because I'll constantly be like, "Yeah, that movie that you like is just Satoshi Kon."
That is funny. Do you like Teen Con King Crete? Black and white? Teen Con King Crete? I think I'm saying that right. That's
Oh, I
another
don't
one I
think I've
recommend. It's
seen
an
that
anime.
one.
That's a good
No.
one.
Oh.
Um, and like, are you a Miyazaki fan?
Yes, yeah.
Have you read what's it called? Shuna's Journey, I think? It's a comic
No.
book. It's a graphic novel he made in the 80s that was basically like a first attempt at a lot of stuff that happens in Princess Mononoke.
That's fantastic. I just saw
Yeah, it's
Nausicaa
really
by
cool.
him, his first animated
Oh
piece
yeah.
before he finds Studio Ghibli because of what they did to him with the rights in America and how they re-edited the movie. So like, oh god, he was brilliant from the
Yeah.
get-go.
You can get this book. I'll send you the actual name, but it's a
Okay.
guy riding around on like an elk who looks a lot like the guy from Princess Mononoke. So it's very
That's
cool. Like
fantastic.
I think you would dig it. And I always recommend comics, so I never
Yeah.
hesitate to do that. But
Yeah. My first cat, Kodama, is his name. He's named after the
Oh,
tree
awesome.
spirits because they found him in the
Nice.
woods.
Yeah.
So
I love those things. My wife and I love those.
they're
I
so
every time I see a
cute.
plush doll of one, I get one for her.
I have a bunch because the cat's name is that, so I keep getting them. And he wouldn't stop purring, and it sounds exactly like the sound that they made when their little heads
Oh,
turned
awesome.
upside down. So I was like, his name is Kodama. I already know.
I first saw that in the theater.
Oh, what a joy.
Yeah. And then I saw, they re-released it in the theater. I
Yes,
made sure to see
yes.
that. It was a limited screening, but I saw that. So I've seen that
Yeah,
movie dozens of times, twice in the movie theater, which was huge.
that's so cool. I even just saw
It was
Porco
awesome.
Rosso for the first time. I didn't know that that one
Oh yeah.
existed. It was like an early one that had gotten away from me. So much fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, the voice is Batman. Michael Keaton plays the main character, Porco Rosso.
Oh, I don't think I've seen it dubbed.
Oh, yeah, I was, working out
Huh.
because movie runtime the name movie runtime comes from I'm watching these movies while working out on an elliptical. No one seems to care. I used to tell
Oh,
people, like, the average
that's
distance you
awesome.
get, but everybody's kinda like, "I don't wanna be shamed," and I'm like, "Don't worry, I'll just work out on my own time. This is the movie review now." Uh,
That's so cool. I didn't know that. I thought it was just the runtime, like the movie length or whatever. No,
no,
that's
I'm
great.
running.
That's so
So,
creative.
I listened to Porco Rosso, I put it on because I was having trouble I can't read while running or I
No, yeah. No, I'm with you on that.
and when I saw it was Michael Keaton, I was like, "Yeah, I love Michael Keaton.
I'll
Give
go
me
back and
some of
watch that
that."
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go back and check that out now. That's funny you said Batman. I started thinking of a whole bunch of other people.
Adam West.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Cool. Well, before we wrap up the show, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't know if I would. My only final thought that is just one that I've kind of been wrestling with. I don't know if I would say that this is a meta experience movie.
Okay, okay.
I don't because who? Like not for me, not for the viewers. Although I get that we were supposed to be like, oh, that's Pinhead, that's the
Mhm,
alien, right?
mhm.
Okay. But I think that it was supposed to be meta, and I was kind of trying to articulate this earlier, but I think it's supposed to be meta for the characters in the movie.
Okay.
And I don't know
Oh,
if that's actually meta. I don't know if that layer is disconnected from what we would traditionally call meta. Like that's what I was saying. Like the characters in the movie don't realize they exist in a universe where if things can happen in a movie, it can happen in real life.
okay. Yeah.
I assume all those horror characters were in their movies, the movies that the characters were watching, not that we watch. Do you know what I mean by that? And so I don't know if that
Mm,
is meta or if
mhm,
that technically is not. And I'm nitpicking, but that's something I've been thinking about a little bit. That's my final thought is,
mhm. Well, is
independent
there
thinking.
a better word or another word that you think might fit better?
I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
I think there's universe building going on that takes from pop culture that we know, and I just think it's more of an homage to that than that. Like if it had literally been Jason from Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger, okay. And if it had been everything that we know of horror movies is real, I get that. And they did a little bit of that, I guess, with the whiteboard now that we've talked about that, but I don't know. I don't know if it's technically meta or not. Like, you know how I say I put myself in those comics? That's a very meta experience for me because now I'm going to be giving baby Hellboy a piggyback ride. Now, I'm the only person to ever do that, but like I'm giving him a piggyback ride, which means there's sort of a piggybacking off of things that have already been done. And this is how I'm hacking my way. I feel like that's meta. Whereas this, and like I said, I could just be nitpicking like a, a dork or a nerd or something. But I do think that it was more than that for me. I thought that was cool. I thought they could have done something with that.
It's interesting, and I really agree with the way that you're cutting this edge here because there's two ways to look at it. You're right. The film itself does not do that. And I, as a viewer, who's a filmmaker, immediately did that thing where I go behind the scenes and I'm like, oh, this is a Hellraiser stand-in because they don't have the rights to say Hellraiser. They don't have the
Right.
rights to make it exactly like Pinhead. They don't have the rights to do any of that stuff. So like Kevin is kind of the closest they could get, and they can't even mention him again, and they can't even show him again. They might have gotten away with showing him and not saying his name. So there's like, oh, can we count intent? I don't know what their intent was. Maybe a better word would be farce.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like we've got the buffoonery, we've got the like taboo subject that's happening that we're trying to discuss with this comedic look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
it's
don't think it. I
yeah.
don't think it matters ultimately. It doesn't
I like
change.
pedantics and etymology, so
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Good. Yeah. I mean, I do think it's worth discussing. And I don't think the
Mhm.
filmmakers would be like, "Don't talk about this." You know what I mean? I think they'd be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Go ahead and discuss it." But like, that's why I say like for a movie that I was like, meh. I don't know. It's
Mhm.
okay. I guess it sure is a lot to talk about. So
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it serves a purpose for sure. If I had gone to the theater to see it, I don't know if it would have justified the price of admission, but
Mm.
it's been a rewarding like experience. So I
Awesome.
wasn't expecting that.
Well, that's the thing when we do these episodes. I always say to people, thank you so much for taking a chance and watching a movie that, by the definition of us picking it, we picked it because we thought you might not like it. So that is putting yourself out there in a way that a lot of film viewers do not want to do. And ultimately, there is a risk that you know yourself well enough that you made the right call and this movie wasn't for you. We do not have 100% success on all of these episodes, and I would hate to think that I harassed people into saying on air, yeah, it was great, when in reality they're like, I don't really like it. I want to talk about the truth. I think that's far more interesting. And people are going to tune into this episode and either be like me, have seen it and loved it, or be like you and be like, that was the experience that I had. They're both so fucking valid.
Yeah, I agree. And like I say, I would never like hate something and then come
Mhm.
on here and just be like, I hate it. There's nothing to talk about. We should have chose another movie. I'll find something to talk about. But I did not do that. Like there was plenty to talk about with
Great.
this. And I thought like
Great.
that was at least you know, it serves a purpose for me beyond just like, the price of admission, a ticket price.
Even if you had done that, we have an episode on From Dusk Till Dawn. My sister and I came on to do it because as children, we watched right up to the point where Cheech Marin says, pussy, pussy, pussy. And then our
Right.
brother just ran in the room and turned it off. So, like, neither of us knew if we were going to like it, but we liked the first half so much, we were sure we were going to like it. We dragged that movie for an hour and a half. We
Oh,
did not have anything nice to say. So even
that
still,
sounds like
sometimes
another.
that happens.
Yeah, do a podcast called "We All Hate This," right? Like, because a lot of people go, "We all love it," and I'm like, "Who is we?" So do one. We all hated it, and have like 3 or 4 people who just want to rail on something negatively for an hour and a half. That would be great. I would
I
love
mean, they should have been titled "We Tried." We honestly tried.
that. Blame the studio, or I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways to figure out why it sucked. Everyone's pretty much sure of why they like something, right? It's our
Mhm.
personal taste that we're satisfied. It
Mhm.
appealed to us personally, right? And I
Mhm.
think a lot of
Mhm.
people do that when they hate it. It's like, who do I blame, right?
Absolutely. And when we love something, we want to justify it in a way where we believe it to be universally lovable and not
Hmm.
be willing to say like, "Oh, I could imagine a person for whom watching this movie that I absolutely adore, might even be my comfort movie, is gonna be a
Yeah,
hellscape." People hate Westerns, and I'm like, "Tombstone, anytime." Like, absolutely not for, like, a majority of people.
yeah, no, true, yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know. I think you got a good thing going here. I think
Ah,
this
thank
is
you.
it's worth. Yeah, it's an aspect of being a movie fan that's worth exploring for sure.
Thank you so much. Well, again, just thank you for being on the show. I could talk to you for, like, another 40 minutes, so I'm gonna cut it here, rein it in.
Okay.
There are links popping up while we're talking to showing people how to get to what you're talking about, get to your stuff. I cannot encourage people enough to check out your YouTube channel. There's so much fun stuff on there. There's so much content on there. You're doing stuff every day. It's got the vibe that I kind of like for this show, which is a little bit of a hangout. I'm assuming that you're listening to this podcast like I listen to podcasts. Your hands are in some clay, you're painting some wall, you're at work on the computer, and we're just hanging out with you so you feel a little less lonely. And I can't tell you, your channel is perfect for that feeling.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm trying to not do audience capture, but appeal to all audiences. I don't want people to just be doom scrolling all day. There's got to be more to it than that.
No, this is a great anecdote for doom scrolling. In fact, like hang out with people, talk into the chat and say what you're feeling, and you're going to get engaged. Do that kind of stuff. I think it's great.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode. We're going to bump into corrections and omissions for anything that we messed up, or didn't show you cool facts that we might have. Like one fact I didn't tell you, the werewolf was a costume that was left over from Underworld. It didn't get used in Underworld, and they were like, don't throw that away. We'll use it.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, and I may be totally wrong about Jodorowsky's Dune. So
wait and find out.
Fact check me on that.
Next segment. Welcome to Corrections and Omissions. This is the part of the show where we go over stuff that I might have wanted to deeper dive into, or that we might have misspoke on during the show. So if you heard something and you were like, that's not the word, it's Brechtian, not Brechtolian. You're right, it is. It's Brechtian, from Brecht, not Brechtol. I said it twice, and I meant to say Brechtian, but everything else I said was correct, and that's why we have this part of the show. So welcome. Let's dive right into a couple more deep dives, corrections, and omissions. I mentioned that I had auditioned for and gotten through Jeopardy, and I got this really cool pen that is the size, the weight, and the shape of the buzzer so that you can practice when you're at home. This is the pen, as you can see. It's the length of the buzzer. Don't do that too many times. And the top gives you the hand feel so that you can get ready to ring in, buzz in, be part of the fun. Do I watch Jeopardy and Pop Culture Jeopardy at home holding this and buzzing it? No, that would be ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about. I had mentioned that the fans of Dark Souls had put together a mythology book that explains all of what is going on in that series. This is that book. It is the Abyssal Archive. You can get the really shiny, nice paperback. You can get the really, really nice hardcover. You can even get the digital version. It is so cool. I wound up finding this because I love Judson Cowan, who does the maps for this book. He does really gorgeous maps. And this is put together by Loki, by fans, by everyone who really loves Dark Souls. It is put out by the company called Toon and Fairweather. A link will show up right now so you can go and deep dive, buy this, enjoy it. I am always trying to get people equally addicted to anything from Software. The company is called From Software, so it's from Software. We spoke about this just briefly on the show, but I went on the Letterhack show a while back, and he did a live drawing of me, and I want to show it with you because I absolutely adore it. I think it kind of looks a lot like me for something that was drawn under 30 minutes while he chatted. So he was chatting and drawing at the same time, which is not exactly a skill that I have. Here's the image right now. And of course, a link to go and watch the episode. If you enjoyed watching us and listening to us talk now, and you were like, damn, I could have gone for that extra 40 minutes you guys spoke about, check out that episode. It's real fun. I spoke about the concept of being a maven, and I kind of conflated it with being a connector and didn't really get it right, so I would like to redefine that right now for everyone listening. These are, of course, from Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, where he describes the different types of people who can spread ideas and influence social change. They are mavens, connectors, and salespeople. Just to define those for you, a maven is the knowledge expert. That's someone who gathers deep amount of knowledge on a topic, and then they share it with other people. They aren't motivated by persuasion, but simply the desire to educate and share this information. They might research, compare, analyze, and spread their findings. Now, this might be through blogs, conversations, social media, all kinds of different ways that you can spread information. They are deeply trusted because of their expertise. That is definitely Matt. definitely Matt, especially if you're talking about comic books, especially if you're talking about Hellboy. That's me if you're talking about movies and things of my bailiwick. But I kind of conflated it with connector. Now, that's the social hub. Connectors are people who know everyone. And we all know this one person. You can't go out anywhere without someone being like, hey, Sam. And you're just like, Jesus, okay. Now, they thrive on bringing people together. They have wide, diverse social circles, and they effortlessly link individuals who wouldn't otherwise meet. Now, that's something that Matt is very good at. Matt can bring people together, and he calls himself the hub. Makes sense, the social hub, the connector, but he is also a maven and he has a lot of expertise. Now, he's going to spread his ideas by introducing people to each other, introducing people to the right audiences, making them essential in social and professional networks, because how do you meet anybody? Networking is one of the hardest things that I have to do, and I think that Matt is very gifted in this. So he's a connector maven. Of course, the last one is a salesperson, and I guess my dad, who was a little salesperson, was quite good at this. The persuasive influencer. These are charismatic people who can sell an idea, a trend, a product. They could literally sell themselves if they needed to, and many actors are very good salespersons for this. They have the ability to sway your opinion through charm or emotional appeal more than, say, data points. This is probably my weakest. I did not dump stat on this kind of charisma. I like to just show you the science and get you excited about it. Now, unlike mavens, who use facts, and connectors, who use social networks, salespeople just literally convince you to take action. So they're really, really powerful in their own right. It's just another way to get stuff out there. It's just, I'm not very good at this. Of course, I think Matt is a mix of the two. I think most people are probably a mix of all three. What about yourself? Do you think that you are more a maven, more a connector, more a salesperson? I'd be curious, throw that in the comments. Let me know what you think, because it's kind of like all Malcolm Gladwell. It's deeply fun to think about the ideas that he gives to us. I said that I believe the jump across the chasm that Chris Hemsworth's character makes in the film, or does not, spoiler alert, succeed in making, was scientifically possible. So I wanted to just double check that, because feelings are not science. And no, the bike jump in this is not at all possible. The scene where Kurt, played by Chris Hemsworth, attempts to jump the massive ravine on his dirt bike, it's obviously, we know the whole time that he's never going to get through. I guess Matt forgot about that, but they showed us that there is something that's going to stop them and it's going to keep our characters caught in this horror scenario. But I thought it would be fun to break it down scientifically because, like I just said, I'm a bit of a maven and I love my data points. The key factors into making that jump when I looked into it were takeoff speed, launch angle, and gravity or air resistance, and then I compared it to the longest actual successful jump across a ravine. Now, the takeoff speed of a motorbike that would need to make such an insane and large gap would have to be a minimum of 70 to 90 miles per hour. I think we can all agree that Kurt was not doing that speed when he got off the edge of the ravine. The launch angle, the optimal angle for a maximum distance and projectile motion is around 45 degrees, but in real world bike jumps, riders usually go a little bit lower than that. Kurt, of course, has no ramp at all. No ramp. So he would need to be jumping from a point that was higher than the point he was going to land to. That's possible. We don't exactly know that from the angles that we got. Although we do know that it's going to have to be like more than 300 feet. It's a pretty far distance. And then, of course, gravity and air resistance. Even with the perfect conditions, like I said, he would need to be coming at it exactly right. The longest successful jump from any kind of bike to ravine situation was Robbie Madison. He did a world record jump of 390 feet, or for our other people who don't use feet, 119 meters. And that was with perfect conditions and a specialized ramp. The ravine in Cabin in the Woods is definitely at least 300 feet, probably 400 feet. And so that really makes me feel like even though there is the force field there, and that obviously makes the jump impossible, without the force field there, given the bike's speed, the angle, the lack of the ramp, there's no way that Kurt would have made it, even if there wasn't a giant force field keeping him in there. Was Matt right when he said that the creative team who worked on Jodorowsky's Dune wound up being the creative team working on Alien after Dune was scrapped? Yeah, he was absolutely right. He remembered that documentary correctly. And in fact, here's how that happened. We have Dan O'Bannon, who was the writer on special effects on Alien, was working on Jodorowsky's Dune on scripts and, would you believe, special effects. When Dune fell apart, he later wrote Alien and brought several of the Dune collaborators onto the project. If anything, I would say that it was Dan O'Bannon who decided to grab everyone around him and go and do Alien. And he had met them from this failed project. And what is a better way to kind of help your friends than say, I know that didn't work out. Let's go do something that's going to be groundbreaking. Now, H.R. Geiger, the conceptual artist for what we know to be Aliens, was originally hired by Jodorowsky to design House Harkonnen's world. Now, Geiger's grotesque biomechanical aesthetic found a beautiful place in what winds up being Alien. He designs the xenomorphs, he designs the ships, he designs everything that makes it what it is. I don't think you can think Alien without thinking Geiger, but oh my god, did you know that Geiger almost did Dune? Wow, I gotta see this documentary. Mobius, who is also known as Jean Guillard, is the concept artist and storyboard for Alien. Now, this is another person who worked on Dune. He contributed character designs and storyboards. He did a lot of what you know in Aliens, just basically the suits that the characters get in, the loader suit, all of that. That's going to be Mobius. And then, of course, there's Chris Foss, another concept artist. He was recruited for Dune to design the spacecrafts and the vehicles, and then his futuristic industrial aesthetic was thrown right into Alien because it didn't really get used, and it was great, but hey, you know what? That works perfect for the Nostromo and all of our other ships. So, essentially, Jodorowsky's Dune was like a creative incubator for what winds up being Alien. And after Dune collapsed, Dan O'Bannon, who is now working on Alien and wrote the script, reassembled much of that team, and it gives us the incredible, unique, amazing film that we wind up with. If Jodorowsky had made Dune, Alien might not have looked exactly the way it did. It might have gotten pushed back. It might not have gotten made. Who even knows? It's one of those, like, we have to have this lost thing to have this great thing. It's kind of a cool wabi-sabi. And finally, I wanted to dive really deep into this one because I didn't really know for sure when we started talking about it. It's not something I've really stopped to bother and think about. But is this movie, The Cabin in the Woods, meta? And what is the official definition of meta, farce, satire, or parody? What is this film if we're really breaking it down and looking at what defines those terms? This is what I found out. The term meta refers to something that is self-referential, meaning it comments on or acknowledges itself within its own context. In storytelling, which is film and literature, etc., meta often means that the work recognizes or plays within its own structure, tropes, or audience expectations. Definition strictly for meta in storytelling and media. A work is meta when it is self-aware and references its own medium, genre, or storytelling conventions rather than just existing in them. What are the key features of something that is a meta story? Well, it needs to be self-aware. It knows it is a movie, book, game, etc., and it reflects on that. Now, we're going to put a pin on that because Matt made a very interesting comment saying that the characters inside Cabin in the Woods do not know that they are in a movie. And so that's why he didn't feel like it was meta. And I kind of agreed with him, but we'll pin it right there. Self-awareness. Genre commentary. It deconstructs, criticizes, or plays with tropes that have been established in its genre. Sometimes, this is the third one, sometimes it breaks the fourth wall. Now, it doesn't always break the fourth wall. Characters will acknowledge the audience directly. Now, this is going to happen in, say, Ferris Bueller or Deadpool. This is extreme meta. It is not a requirement for being meta, but it is often a characteristic of what makes something like instantly considered meta. And then finally, the last key feature of a meta story is that it is a story about storytelling and the storytelling process. So an example would be adaptation, which is about the writing of its own script. Now, let's break down similar concepts. I talked about meta, satire, parody, and farce. What is the difference between all of those? Well, we said already, meta acknowledges it's playing with its own structure or genre. That is actually Cabin in the Woods. It deconstructs horror tropes, and that makes it meta. Now, satire, on the other hand, critiques society, ideas, or tropes, and it often uses irony and humor to do so. So a perfect example of this would be American Psycho. It is a satire of consumerism. Parody. Now, this mimics the style for comedic effort. This is comedic effect. This is, like I had said in a Scary Movie, all those ones that are just making fun of the whole horror franchise. And the last one I said was farce. Now, this is an exaggerated absurdity and is often a physical comedy. Airplane is a farce. It's got super over-the-top gags, and I love it. I get it totally. That's a farce. This is not exactly a farce, although it does have some physicality in it. This is really, really gonna be meta. And let's go back to that first thing that I pinned about self-awareness. Now, do characters in the movie need to know that they're in a movie for it to be meta? No. No, they don't. A story can be meta without the characters breaking the fourth wall or realizing that they're in a constructed narrative. This is just like, that's not necessary. What makes something meta is that the film itself acknowledges that the structures, tropes, and genre conventions are being played with, whether the characters know that or not. Sometimes they do, though, in certain films, but for the most part, even in the films in which you think they do really, really know, they don't actually think they're literally in a film being filmed. That's really only the Truman Show. So even in a movie like Scream, they talk about being in a movie. They talk about all of the tropes that would happen, like, oh, you're the virgin, you might die first kind of stuff. But they don't literally think that they are in a movie. We would all say that Scream is a perfect example of meta, but even those characters don't know that they're in a movie. This is really more like being from the filmmaker's perspective. That's what makes something meta. Another example of meta without self-aware characters would be like Deadpool. Deadpool talks directly to the audience, but he doesn't literally think that he's in a movie. That's not part of the story that we're having here. So yeah, I really feel like you've got the scientists that are literally manipulating the events to force horror cliches. They're playing with and admitting that there are horror tropes. Then there's the commentary on horror movies as a whole. The movie deconstructs slasher tropes while still playing them straight. It has the entire premise is a metaphor for horror filmmaking and audience expectations. But again, they aren't literally believing that they're in a movie. It's so interesting. Yeah, I love the idea that we should sit here and question the exact words that we're using to describe stuff and then get it perfectly right. So I'm super glad that Matt asked this question about it, because it sent me down this deep, deep hole. And I started to realize stuff like, I'd always thought that the people in Scream thought they were in a movie, but now that I think about it, they don't actually think that they're in a movie. So thank you, Matt, for bringing up this question. I still think it is amazing, even if the answer is not what we had thought it was. The more you know, right? And so that's it for corrections and omissions. These have been really fun to dive into. I definitely encourage you guys to take a look into different parodies, farces, satires, and meta films to really feel the difference. I didn't know until I started looking myself. So some more stuff. And that's it for this episode of What If I Don't Like It? I hope you had as much fun as I did. I really enjoyed this one. This is a movie I like. This is a guest I adore. And even though it didn't totally work out and I didn't get Matt to the point of absolutely adoring this movie as much as I do, I still really love this conversation. And as he himself says, This movie gave you a lot of things to talk about, and that makes it an interesting movie, regardless of getting all the way to a 5-star review. It gives you a lot of things to think about. And so I definitely recommend that if you are on the fence and you've listened to us talk about this movie for this long, but somehow have not yet seen it, give yourself a chance and check it out. I think you would be surprised. It's pretty easy to watch. It's available on Amazon Prime for free if you already have that. Otherwise, it's, I think, $4 on Google Play and Apple TV and Fandango at home. So not super hard to track down at all, and definitely worth $4 in my opinion. Thank you for making it all the way to the end, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.